Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final Ice Queendom podcast, where we can finally discuss it as a whole. I have a very special guest today, the lovely Celtic Phoenix, one of the most creative people I have ever seen when it comes to internet stuff. An author of like real books and stuff, and one of the biggest inspirations for me for when it came to making my own YouTube channel. Hello.
Oh, I did not expect that. You're making me blush. Thank you for all the lovely words. No, I'm just a crazy guy on the internet who decided, hey, this RWBY show, I kind of like it. I wish it were better.
Yeah, isn't that where it all starts? Eventually. No, I remember it was you and Fat Man. I would watch your guys' videos, and then one day I sat there and went, I should do something too.
I always that's the weirdest thing, because I started a lot of my RWBY stuff because I liked Fat Man's videos so much. And I'm like, man, this guy, like, I love RWBY, but something feels off about these seasons, something's quite right. And then he put, like, every complaint I had into words, and I'm like, oh, that makes complete sense now. I completely see it. And, like, I wanted to always be the... I saw how people responded to him because he was so negative and harsh on the show, and he of course started out with these very like needling attacks at the creators and the like, and people really did not take that well.
But I think that was just more like how like a lot of the internet used to work back then. Was just everyone was just nasty. Like, they had this general tone of just, like, if you're not, like, saucily pissed off, then you're not cool, you know?
me and him we've been around since Internet 2.0, or is it 2.0 or 3.0? I can't remember which one we're in currently, but whatever, like, we were in the 0.0 before this, and a little bit of the one before that, where it's, like, complete anonymity, everyone could be as brutal as they wanted, and like you just kind of accepted it as part of internet culture that you were going to get roasted, and you were going to get roasted hard. You know, if you put yourself out there, it's just going to happen. But people, obviously, we started going into this new era of internet where everyone's a little more like, you know, sensitive about hurting people's feelings, and which
is a good thing, I say.
I'm actually kind of mixed on that. I like the more brutal and honest. I feel like people can't really be as expressive as they once were, and I get that people's feelings are hurt, but like, as someone who's had a lot of mean things said about me, you know, bring it on.
It's a healthy combo of both.
yeah. But like, I always saw that, and the reason why I took the approach I did with fixing RWBY was that I wanted to kind of show what was wrong with RWBY in a way that Fat Man did, but in a different direction. Like, he was very deconstructive. I wanted to be reconstructive. I wanted to be a more positive force in the fandom. And we can all see how that turned out, considering that, like, I'm anathema on the RWBY subreddit, apparently. I don't understand that. I honestly, like, guys, I really love RWBY. Look, I made this rewrite to show you how good it can be.
You're the hate-dom. You don't like it exactly how it is now.
Dedicated 4 years of my life to rewrite 5 years almost of this show.
It's just, I think it's a thing where, like, just critique in general. Like, you sit there and you listen to criticism, and then the next thing I know is I was sitting there, like, because I was back in university, and I was sitting there, rather than listening to anything my stupid teacher was saying, I was just sitting there, like, thinking of RWBY, and going over, like, criticisms that I had heard from videos, and being like, what else is there to explore when it comes to, like, critique?
What really gets me is that we're in this era of, like, where critiquing is seen as this negative thing instead of a natural process of the creative mind, where it's necessary. To critique is to grow. It is. And here's the thing about some critiques. Some critiques are subjective. People always try and hide behind, well, it's your subjective opinion. Sometimes they are. Sometimes you really need to understand yourself and understand where you're coming from. There are things that I don't like. Like, for example, I don't like cringe humor. I hate cringe humor.
I agree with you. I hate that shit.
But I understand that some people love that shit. So it's not my wheelhouse. I can say, oh, this element of the story I didn't like. But beyond that, if you can, like, peel it away, you can be like, okay, but is there something objectively wrong here? And that's where, like, you can get to things like plot holes. Plot holes are objective wrongs in the story. They aren't just things you don't like. It's this contradicts what came before, and it makes it inherently make less sense. It's one of those things that like, you kind of have to dig into with criticism. And anyone that, like, tries to ignore that, you're denying yourself growth from denying that. Now, if you want to push back and say, like, oh, that's not a plot hole, fine, but you gotta build up your argument for it.
Exactly. And that's one of the things, like I've taken art classes, you know, and nothing hurts more than having drawn a piece and you put it up in front of the whole class and everyone's like, that looks wrong, this looks weird, I don't like that color, this, that, the other thing. And yeah, that hurts, but at the same time, if you don't hear that, you're not going to improve beyond that. If someone says, hey, the proportions on your face look weird, you're not going to make it so your faces don't look weird if you don't hear that part that might hurt your feelings.
You want to know what hurts an artist the most? Is hearing, that's nice. Oh, it was nice.
Oh my god.
It was fine. Ugh. It's like, oh, so any feelings on that? Any strong opinions? Because when you hear that, if someone is critiquing it, it means they have taken the time to sit down and think about what you were trying to do or think about what your piece was trying to say. And they are giving you feedback on, like, the technical aspects, on the emotional aspects. Sometimes maybe you just didn't do something that landed right. I know my first book, which I people apparently didn't take to, and I understand that because I wrote it largely for myself. It just didn't land right with some people, so I took that criticism. And my second book is a much more generalized, it's a much less niche and a lot more action heavy story. It's playing to a different wheelhouse because, you know, the thing that I was interested in at the time didn't resonate with people, and now I'm more interested in having something that resonates with people overall. I took that criticism to heart and I ran with it.
Hell yeah.
If I hadn't, I wouldn't be growing as a person and as an author. But
exactly.
If someone just came up to me and said, wow, that story was nice, and I'm like, did you like something about it in particular? Did you hate something about it?
I hate what that. Was nice about it?
Like, even my father, talking about my newest book, he like, his biggest criticisms were, like, major plot points where a character gets, like, oh, your character becomes kind of like Iron Man. Not to spoil my book, but it's like, no, that's not really it. I'm definitely inspired by that, but that is the wrong read. Like, that, I honestly, like, it kind of insults me a little bit sometimes how shallow my family are when they come to criticizing media. It's like they have such a shallow opinion on things, and, like, his criteria for film got... When my family, they overall enjoyed Kenobi, and I'm sitting there like, I was like, oh, in the rare instance that I'm sitting down and watching it with you guys, you know, you guys want my company, you said, yo, we wish you would watch more things with us. Well, here I am, I'm sitting down and watching it, you guys don't want to hear as I'm actively criticizing the show as it goes on. You guys wanted me here. Why did you want me here if you didn't want my input? Did you just want me sitting here silently with you, like, watching this terrible show?
Which I guess, and that's like, speaking of Ice Queendom, some people, like, if someone out there, like, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I think Ice Queendom was perfect, I disagree with many of the things you say, that's fine. Because one thing about criticism, even if it is objective criticism, sometimes people just disagree. And that's totally fine. You're not wrong for liking Ice Queendom if you did. But we, had some criticisms.
Yeah, I will say overall, I enjoyed Ice Queendom. I had a decent time watching it. Last time editing it, God, this was an editing nightmare, and I still got to make sure I get the playlist for reactions up and ready to go. But overall, I enjoyed it. I had a fun time. It's one of the more consistent pieces of RWBY content, I think, but that's not necessarily a thing in its favor, if I'm being honest. Critter is right in that if you disagree with us, that's fine. Listen to what we're saying, listen to the arguments we make. If you feel that we've made something, if one of our criticisms based on an objective basis, like, oh, this is a plot hole because, Please go in the comments down below. Argue against us. Go argue away. It's fine. Like, just we understand that if you had a blast with this, we're not trying to take that away from you. I have fun with RWBY all the time. I also recognize RWBY has some really big problems. Like, you can have both positions. You can enjoy something that isn't good. You can do that.
You can think something is good overall, but also see things that you think are flaws within it. Like, for Ice Queendom, I think I confused some people, because I said I think Ice Queendom is the worst thing RWBY has ever produced. And I stand by that. But that doesn't mean it was bad. Just comparative to RWBY's other stuff, which is generally very good, I think it was the worst.
I don't know. Volume 5 exists.
So here's my criteria with that. With Volume 5, there's 1 or 2 episodes that I think are good. The rest of it is very bad. But at the very least, when it is very bad, it still looks fine. It might be boring, but it looks fine. When Ice Queendom was bad, it looked awful. That was the thing that pushed it down for me.
I have to push back against, because I remember Emerald shooting at RWBY and RWBY just standing there lazily spinning her sight in the most, and then the most awful thing where, like, she's spinning her sight and then she, like, fires it to, like, push herself out of the way of something, and we follow the bullet, but as we're following the bullet, they just cut to a different shot of us following the bullet at a slightly different distance, so it's very noticeable. It is the most jarring fucking thing to watch.
Because they were like, and it looks like she's shooting Weiss, but it's just transitioning into her fight, but it's just like, why did we do this?
And then if you zoom in, the bullet is still in the casing, because they didn't understand how bullets work.
And they still do that. They still have the bullet in the casing, like, to this day, every time we see bullets.
It is. They live in Texas. How do they not know guns? I know it's Austin, but still.
It's more than that. RWBY's a fantasy world. There's no creativity with what the dust bullets look like.
All right, well, we're getting off into the weeds. We should probably find, like, an angle to attack Ice Queendom from.
Let's start with the recap episodes, because that's how it bookends itself. So then everything else we can cover is just the nightmare stuff.
Right. The recap episodes cover basically the entire first volume and a little bit of Volume 2's opening episode.
Yes.
So that's basically the bookends of this series. The recaps, I thought episode 1 was fine. It cut some weird choices, but overall it was okay. It's only episode 2 where I started having issues.
That's so weird, because I thought episode 2 was the best out of the recap episodes.
I should clarify this. Episode 2 was the most uneven of the two, because it had the highest highs and some of the lowest lows of the recap.
See, that I understand. I get that. Yes.
Yeah, because I thought the first half of episode 2 was spectacular.
Yes.
Yes. We mentioned this, but they condensed like 3 episodes, maybe even 4 episodes of Fly. Sorry, just reflexively, just immediately. Sorry.
I was like, an assassin has ran in and snapped Phoenix's neck.
I have that much cartilage in my neck.
You won't speak of Ice Queendom.
Miles, no! Eddie, please!
I turn around. Carrie's behind me.
But no, okay. So as I was trying to say before that, Fly rudely interrupted me. Episode 2 managed to condense like 3 to 4 episodes of the original Volume 1 down into like 2 or 3 scenes.
And it's really, really smart, too, like how they do it. I was blown away.
Yeah, it's like,
I sat there and went, well, why didn't Celtic Phoenix think of this for fixing RWBY?
I was saying that. I was like, you guys did a better job than I did. This was the episode of all episodes that heightened my expectations of this series. I'm like, damn, they are doing some incredibly smart things with this. Incredibly smart things about this.
Like, even something as simple as combining the RWBY meets everyone who will eventually be in Team RWBY, Weiss talking to Pyrrha and Jean in the locker room, and all that, into just being on the airship. I was like, that's brilliant. That's what an amazing way. Like, it made me start thinking about how much fluff you can cut in things like that.
I was like halfway expecting them to go like even a step further and just cut out the entire speech on the hillside, and instead they would just do the landing strategy thing they did in the novels. In the
like kind of like jump out of the airship and like air raid into the forest.
Well, I mean, more like the bottom of the airship bottoms out and like everyone just falls.
Yeah.
Like they didn't do that, and I only remember so much of the Emerald Forest, but I remember they cut a lot of important character building stuff.
Yeah, but for that kind of thing, I was willing to forgive it because we don't have the time to go over everything, and theoretically, they were going to make up for that stuff within the Nightmare plotline. But they didn't.
They didn't. And there were other things in there where, like, the animation got quote-unquote really good. And the animation's going to be an entirely different section on its own, but I have some words about the Sakuga in this show.
The internet learned the word Sakuga like 3 years ago, and now I just see people throwing it around. And I'm like, guys, you're not using it right. More frames doesn't mean Sakuga, okay?
Yeah, more frames does not equal better animation, and I have some... We'll get to the technical.
Yeah.
So the recap episodes are... the second one is okay. Like, it balances out to okay, where it's like, man, that second half is really weak. Like, it really truncates too much. It doesn't...
Once they start fighting the Big Grim, it really does have, like, a bit of a dive in quality. Yeah. Which I think also just because you can't replicate what they were able to do with that original Emerald Forest episode from the original show, you know? Especially with such a short amount of time.
Yeah, The third episode is really where we hit the fucking brakes. The third episode of the recap was terrible. Especially just because, like, you have characters... There is literally a point where RWBY just spontaneously, when they're looking for Blake, because Blake has run off, she's on the whole, like, maybe we're just tired of being pushed around, she's run off, and everyone's worried about her, they're searching. And RWBY just spontaneously is like, I'll check near the docks, or I'll check near the warehouses, I think. And literally the next scene we see her at, she's nowhere near a fucking warehouse. She's seen at, like, a fountain?
She's hanging out with Penny somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like, wait, where did you say you go? And then they just kind of stumble upon, like Blake and Sun just kind of stumble upon the White Fang. They completely cut out, like, Sun's, like, line about, like, if we look for them where they're not supposed to be and don't find them, that means they're innocent. Like, that moon logic is one of Sun's greatest things, and I know people were... Fatman was angry that I moved that to Yang in fixing, but all the same, like, it's a clear discussion of, like, the logic of the characters and how they go to the places they go, and...
Instead, they just kind of, like, they read the script, and they just know they need to be there.
And then they get there, and then we skip the entire fight at the docks. And
that was so disappointing.
Bye Roman for the rest of the show.
I know.
Oh god, I need to add dub to the list because we didn't even discuss, like, the dub itself, because there was the whole thing involving Torchwick's voice actor, and I have some opinions. I have some very strong opinions.
A lot of people were a lot like, the dub is getting delayed because of Torchwick's voice actor, and I understand delaying it because the original VA unfortunately passed.
Yeah, Billy Kametz.
But Torchwick's only in, like, one episode for, like, 3 seconds. I don't think
he's in 2 episodes for a grand total of, like, 2 minutes, and the fact that it delayed the entire dub on the supposed simul dub to delayed dub to it's not coming out till the entire thing has aired. I'm sorry.
Yeah, big press X to doubt.
That is not because one voice actor passed away and they had to scramble for a replacement. I am sorry. Like, Billy Kametz, may he rest in peace. I was actually really excited to hear him as Torchwick, and I'm sad we're never going to get that.
Yes.
But that is the biggest, oh, this is a golden opportunity to excuse the fact that we have no clue what we're fucking doing and need to delay the dub. It feels so sickening to me that they used this as a smokescreen.
You can just feel it, that they thought it was going to be so easy. Because you can tell they probably got, like, the first 3 episodes way in advance. And they're like, oh, we can dub over this, yeah. And then they didn't realize that when anime launches, it really is like at the last second the animation is done, and so they're like, oh, we don't actually have the time to dub all of this like we thought.
That's going to the animation thing. We have some words, I think, on the animation industry coming up, but yeah, I think, I guess we're just moving into the dub a little bit here. I feel sickened how they did that, and also I hear rumor that they were expectant to, like, I don't remember where I heard this. I don't know if it was speculation, but someone apparently said to me that they expected to be able to use the old audio from Volume 1.
I believe RT will cut corners anywhere. I don't think they would, because surely they're smart enough to know that. Because the thing was, Ice Queendom did a very faithful job taking their original dialogue and changing it just to fit in Ice Queendom, but that just, like, Japanese words do not match English words in any degree.
We'll get there with the performances and portrayal, because that's actually, I think that's going to tie in very much with, like, the humor, and there is something very distinct to be said there. But to kind of fast forward really far to the very, actually, I think maybe we want to start diving into the technical, because a lot of the things I had an issue with in the final episode were less about them adapting and more about those technical issues.
I think I know what you're going to want to talk about.
Considering we had an entire, ranty discussion about it in the reaction. So, in the technical sense, in the show, I think we'll start with performances first, because the animation is going to be pretty long in itself.
Okay, so I think the performances were fine in the Japanese version.
Yeah, the performances by Japanese standards were fine. However, as an adaptation of RWBY, I think that something significant has been very much lost in translation. The humor, in particular, I think took the greatest nosedive, in that in the original RWBY, a lot of its humor was actually surprisingly quick-witted, a lot of, like, just people reacting, and no bigger casualty of this was the infamous sister, friends, Weiss, hey!
Yep.
That scene.
I knew this was going to be the thing.
But not just that, but, like, if you go back to our reaction to the first 3 episodes, the other one that really got hurt, even though it was in that section that was really well truncated, that early section of episode 2, was the yes, it is almost as nice as this book, which I will continue to read once you are gone. Which, like, if you, in the original Japanese, it's like, yes, almost as nice as this book, which I will continue to read once you are gone. It's like completely devoid of the staggered humor that made that line work. And it's not like a ha-ha funny, but it's this sort of low-level humor that I really enjoy about RWBY, where you can tell that the characters they have personality, and, like, the writers are having fun with those personalities.
Yeah, like, even something as, like, not even just that, but something like, It's a Combat Skirt, which is a bit more, big as far as RWBY's humor goes.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of motion and sound effects with that one, but it's so, like, snappy, and that's really how a lot of RWBY's comedy works. And I think what hurts the most is there were so many, like, damn interviews with, like, people working on Ice Queendom being like, we're trying really hard to blend both Japanese humor and the original American humor. And I'm like, I don't think you are.
No, the only thing you added of the Japanese humor was making Weiss stereotypical tsundere, and we're getting to that. We will get to that, I promise. But like I noticed very little of the Japanese humor in there. Having been watching anime like my entire life at this point, I noticed very little. And for the record, I typically prefer the Japanese dub. So it's like it's not like I'm unfamiliar with this stuff. I've been to Japan. I partially speak the language. Like, so if anyone wants to complain about that, you can take it up in my complaints box that it will burn at the end of the stream.
And the thing is, like, because it was something I talked about early on, was that the humor is not landing with me at all. But it might just be because I don't speak this language and I have to read the subtitles. So it might just be that. But then hearing a little bit of the dub from that teaser, I was like, I don't think hearing it in another language is going to fix it, honestly.
Yeah. But this goes to the dub, where one of the things that is irritating about this show is that they about Ice Queendom in particular, is they kind of streamlined the characters a little bit. Like, Yang has lost her hot-cold mentality. She was effectively bipolar. I know that that's kind of thrown around these days. It's an actual medical diagnosis, but she very much had this very bipolar personality where she was very hot, very hot, but then very chill. Like, she was a relaxed person until she got angry.
It's so, like, the first thing we see with her in the Emerald Forest. She's having fun. She's joking around. Monsters are attacking, and she's having a good time. Oh, she touched her hair. She's pissed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we never see that. Even when Yang does activate her semblance at the end of Ice Queendom, it's just not there.
I think of all the characters in the show, Yang was probably robbed the most of her character.
Absolutely.
She's the only one that didn't get any kind of focus. Her whole thing was about RWBY and growing up. It wasn't anything of her own that was... She literally was the fourth wheel in this entire show.
Her the biggest thing she had to learn was, Yang, you need to stop doing so much. You're coddling RWBY, so stop doing things.
Stop it.
Go into the...
Get help.
I had a joke that I thought of. It was, why didn't we ever get to see Yang's nightmare? And if Yang had a nightmare, she would just become one of the shadow people and become one of the people in the background. Like she's always destined to do.
But to that point is that these character portrayals have been streamlined for Ice Queendom, which I think A, was unnecessary, and B, damages the performances because suddenly they're all much more mellow in the way they deliver things. RWBY, it doesn't have this excitable spark to it. Yang lacks any kind of underlying like anger or bite. Blake is no longer this dry and kind of, she's biting,
sarcastic.
Yeah. Weiss,
catty, honestly.
Yeah, Weiss is no longer catty either. Like she feels much less aggressive. She feels much more submissive, and that's not Weiss. Weiss is very much like a get the fuck out of my face. I don't want to talk to you. Like,
and I think it's because a lot of the dialogue, just in general, other than them recreating dialogue 1-to-1, it just feels so expository throughout so much of Ice Queendom.
Oh yeah,
it's like they're not talking; they're just describing the thing they do. You know?
Oh, just wait till we get to episode 10. Oh my god. Ugh. Oh, that was such a bad episode for so many different reasons. But yeah, no.
And I'm worried that kind of just general blasé-ness of the characters is going to translate to the English dub.
Oh yeah.
Because listening to the teaser, I'm just like, where's your emotions, guys?
Well, I called that. I like first of all, the actors involved in RWBY, while they are now more so in the voice acting industry, they're not very used to dubbing. So I could already tell they're going to have some difficulties. But hearing the performances, I'm like, there's no room, because when you have a delivery, it needs to match the facial expression. And the facial expressions in this match, like, because the animators are obviously animating to the dialogue from the Japanese actors. So you have that step. And so they're not animating the emotions as they would be for the actual characters. They're animating for the Japanese appraisal of these characters. So you already got that in the way. But then when you're dubbing, you have to match not only the lip flaps, but the expression of the character on screen. You can't... They experimented with it a lot in the 90s. That's one reason that people love the original Sailor Moon dub, where it was like, oh my god, you're actually you're actually... tuxedo mask. It's actually him. Like that kind of delivery you don't hear anymore, because like the they're much more professional, and that I think that's some detriment in some ways.
There's a lot less just personality, uniqueness of the actor's specific personality,
and so
just in general.
What you're going to get from the dub is not the RWBY girls as we know it from RWBY proper. What you're going to get is the Japanese interpretation of these characters, then filtered through the actresses trying to...
Like an interpretation of an interpretation, eventually.
It's the world's worst game of telephone.
I'm also... do we know who translated... who did the translations for the English dub? Because that can change a lot, too. Because I was thinking, it's specifically RWBY going, "You are so arrogant, I hate you." And I'm like, that's so weird, because I was counting out the syllables of, "You're so arrogant, I hate you." That's like 7. And I'm like, you could have still had, like, "Why are you so bossy, I hate you." Like, you could have had it similar, almost 1-to-1, and it's such a weird change to make it arrogant.
If you're smart, you can even have it be a little bit of a slur. So instead of "why are you," just "why are you?" You can truncate syllables a little bit. Like I'm not very up on how dubbing works. I'm not like super informed on that. I have very cursory knowledge, but understanding the need for specific beats in different languages, it takes a bit of artistry. And there's one reason, like I met Michael J. Tatum years ago before I even had a YouTube channel like this.
Cool.
And I love the man because he did the dub of my favorite anime ever, which is Steins Gate. And I remember going up to him and being like, "Hey man, I love Steins Gate. Okabe Rintaro is so personable. You really brought life to him. I enjoyed it so much, and it brought me out of a dark time in my life." And he grabbed my hands and like held them.
Whoa.
And he's like, he's like, "Thank you so much for saying that," because I was having emotional breakdowns in the writing room, in the booth, and it's like,
damn,
we shared this moment together, and it made me really appreciate, because I didn't realize he was the voice director on that show. He was the dubbing director for that show, so it made me really appreciate how much work goes into dubbing, and I feel none of that passion with the dub that we're getting. And it's just so, and I knew it. I knew we were going to get that level of passion, because it just feels that it permeates this entire show of like, it feels like they're doing it out of obligation, which is bad, because it feels like you put at the end the Monty thing. Oh, I need to add that to the list.
It's because it really does, because I mentioned it in my last review for episode 12, but Carrie had a tweet, and it was something along the lines of, "Wow, I can't believe something I created is now being cast and watched in Japan." And I'm like, okay, it's also watched in America. I know you like Japan, but is that the only reason you wanted to make the show, was to go, look, it's in Japan?
What was he saying that about actual RWBY or about Ice Queendom?
It's about Ice Queendom.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, you do realize you have a Japanese dub of the actual show you wrote. Like, the show you actually wrote, because you only had supervising status on this. We have To Ubukata, we had him writing this. Oh, 1 minute. Okay, sorry, I thought my recording stopped. But we have,
I can't, on that note, I hate how many people are just like, Gen Urobuchi wrote this. I'm like, no, he didn't! Idiots! Guys, it's in the first trailer! He's not the writer!
It's all Noah Zero all over again, where Gen Urobuchi, wrote, a very brief outline. Maybe he did the first episode of All Noah Zero, but, which blew everyone away. And then afterwards, people took it up and just ran it into the ground.
And I saw so many comments like, well, if you've seen Madoka Magica, you know what we're getting into. And I'm like, he's not writing this, guys.
Yeah, he is not. The Magical Quintet, or the Magical Quartet, this is not.
Yeah.
That is a completely different team. It's not, I don't think, he's the only person involved in Madoka that was on this project. And
he was... the art director or something like that.
No. He was the concept. He was he came up with the concept for the show. And so, To Ubukata took that and wrote the actual screenplay and the actual plot line. It's like, for all we know, Gen came in and was like, oh yeah, we can do 8 episodes and then we can do like 3 recap episodes. That's roughly what he came in and said. And he's like, here's the rough outline. And then Toe is like, all right, I got you covered. Don't worry, I won't screw this up like I did Psycho-Pass 2. And then Toe screwed it up like he did Psycho-Pass 2.
Deep cuts.
Yeah, no, because Psycho-Pass is another one of my favorite anime of all time, up there with Madoka Magica, because Gen Urobuchi is a fantastic writer.
Yes, he is.
He's so fantastic that he actually wrote the only good Fate property. I'm standing by that statement. Come at me, Fate fans. Your show sucks. Fate Zero is the only thing that comes close to good. And even then...
Circling back to the dubs, one thing I'm really not looking forward to with the dub of Ice Queendom is it's a thing that anime does, and I really hate it, which is the just noises that like a girl looks over and she goes, and then like she looks at her food and goes, and I'm really not excited to hear the RWBY cast attempt to do those noises.
I just want it when John is looking up at the jock statue. Instead of making like a I wanted to make a I need that home improvement. I need that home improvement. Like, just, you know what? Just tap Tim Allen and ask him to do a line read of that. Just do that.
They just steal an audio clip from YouTube or something. It's all grainy.
But no, just make it as crunchy as possible. Yeah. So yeah, my concerns over the portrayal and the performances, I have concerns for the dub, and I have no hope for it, if I'm being honest. I have no intention to watch it at this rate, but...
Nah, I want to get my money back. I want to stop paying these people.
But that's one technical issue. You know, we've covered the humor, the performances. Now we're on to, I think, the biggest of the technical problems, the animation.
Oof. And and so many people had so many excuses lined up. Like, oh, we gotta save the time and budget for other important things. Or, oh, you know, it's gonna get fixed in the Blu-ray. That's just how the anime industry works. And I'm like, that's not... it's not acceptable, though.
Yeah, there's that, but it's also just, like, the good animation that only about 1 minute of it is actually, I would consider, watchable.
Yeah, like, everything they use in the opening of Ice Queendom is the parts they put any effort into.
I disagree with that, because like my biggest issue with the second episode was that when they go quote unquote full Sakuga, it's over animated. Like
I do agree. Yes,
there is a point, and I think part of it, and we discovered this in the last episodes, part of it is that they suddenly change the style of the show in order to achieve it. Like, they have this really bright, like, everything is shiny and kind of glistening. Like her cape is glowing. Like, what the fuck is going on with this animation? It looks nothing like a show we just watched. Like, for me, the best Sakuga typically meshes decently well with the style that we're used to, and that's why it looks so good. Is that, like, it suddenly, it goes from the show that we're watching to the show that we're watching, but really good.
It's almost kind of insulting to a degree, and insulting might be too extreme of a word, but thinking about, like, classic RWBY, where the beauty of it was just these stark colors. You know, like, the white cliff, a red hood, that's it. You know, Now in contrast, Ice Queendom is like everything has like a million different highlights and shadows everywhere.
You're literally changing people's facial structures to make them look softer and warmer and make them that look that Weiss gives RWBY still unnerves me, because it's like, why is Weiss's face so smooshed and round? What?
She looks so sad too. Like, she looks like she just lost something, like her puppy or whatever.
It looks bittersweet, like. I treasure the time together with you, but we must part. It's like
everyone else is just smiling. It's weird.
It is so weird. We did get a little bit of the Juniper fight. That was a little weird. They changed things up in that.
They did, and I don't understand every single. So, like, it's like that and the shonen manga. Every single time they redo RWBY again for the millionth time, they change how they beat the Deathstalker, and I'm like, guys, it was fine the first time. It was coolest the first time.
I guess, like, if there's an overarching thing, is the things they changed, I don't know why they changed them. Like,
Yes.
There are things I'm like, I don't understand why you needed to do that. But, okay, so the times where the animation was really good, I thought really shone through in episode 11 when they're, like, when Weiss is finally on their team after being, you know, she's freed of her possession, and they're fighting Negablake.
Yes.
Like, there were times there where it really popped, where, like, they kept the art style in line with the actual show's art style, and it worked really damn well, and it flowed really awesomely. That moment where RWBY transforms her scythe into the snowboard so she can ride on Weiss's, like, energy blast.
Hell yeah.
That was super fucking
cool. That was so cool.
But then you, like, almost immediately follow that with Negablake breaking off a chunk of rock, which falls towards RWBY, and then, like, in the next shot, it's super shiny, like it's made of, like, marble.
Yeah, it's just like any, like, rapid change to art direction, whether it's something like the budget goes over $1 million or suddenly they're really ugly CG models. Consistency is what I would rather have.
Yeah, and on top of that, you have this major issue I have with the, how to word it. I'm losing it. Brain, stop.
It's gone.
No,
it's gone forever.
It's not gone. No, you're so young. Oh, no.
Well, you're thinking of that.
Yeah.
For me, I would rather. So people talk about Sakuga for, like, you know, killing the Nevermore and whatnot, and while that was fine and dandy, I think Sakuga shines a lot more in, like, small little moments, like crying or hugging someone or something like that.
Emotion. That's the point. I think Sakuga. People focus on action scenes, and action scenes with Sakuga are really cool. But where Sakuga, I think, shines the most is the interpersonal heightened moments where it's like emotions are high. It's like, you want to know what good Sakuga is? It's the Anya smile from Spy X Family. It's the moment where her face shifts into that little smug shit-eating grin that she gives towards Damien. I'm on this because I'm reading the manga right now, and I'm really hyped for the second half of season 1. But, like, that moment, that's really animated. Like, they put a lot of frames into that, and they do it to emphasize the motion. They do it to emphasize the emotion that the motion brings. Like, her shifting from this moment of, like, confusion and doubt into this I'm in charge. Like it's simple. It's not even a super serious scene. It's mostly for comedic effect. But when she does that, you feel the shift through the animation. And that's what's important about Sakuga. It's not just about action. It's about what the action means for the viewer.
Yeah. And the thing, so many people, I got so many comments from people being like, maybe just Studio Shaft was a bad decision for an action anime. And I'm like, they clearly proved they can do action very well. I just don't think the thing ironically, they didn't do what Shaft does great, which is the emotion part.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that Shaft's action, I'm not super familiar with Shaft, but thinking from what I know of Madoka Magica has a very dreamlike feel to it as it is.
Yeah.
But it's weird in that, like, in Madoka, the dreamlike feel carries over into the combat, where it's less about the actual fighting and more about the heightened emotions of those people who are fighting. Like, it's about their mental mindsets. When you watch Madoka Magica, all the fights are about the characters' mindsets, their emotions, and how effectively they're fighting is determined by those things. It's less about the choreography, which looks cool, but it's more about the characters. Whereas here, it's much... RWBY, for all its faults, is much more about the choreography, following up from Monty's style, and it doesn't carry over into a dreamlike atmosphere. A dreamlike setting is not a good place for RWBY to be for its fight scenes.
Yeah, because that seeing, like, even just, like, seeing a weapon like Crescent Rose unfolding and understanding, like, this is something that exists in their physical world. Once you try to go fancy with it, anything can happen in a dream world, it doesn't work because it's already in the real world. The real world is fantastical.
Yeah, so there's so much there that just feels... I don't know how to describe it. The Sakuga feels misplaced at times, and then... and of course, then the animation does the opposite of Sakuga, and it completely shits the bed, like episode 10.
Oof. The infamous episode 10.
Oh, God. I cannot believe one of my favorite parts of the episode 10 reaction was taking the clips from the Red Letter Media podcast where they're talking about some really shitty animated like short from the 60s that's talking about, you know, kids learning about how to count change or whatever. And
yeah,
literally every word that they used and every clip they used, I could one for one replace with a lengthy scene from episode 10. It was my favorite editing moment in that.
And I can forgive, like, you know, bad animation. It happens all the time, you know? Usually I'm very forgiving. It's when it's non-stop bad animation. Like, I can take a single ugly looking face, but when it just keeps going and gets worse and worse and worse, that's when I'm gonna be like, I think something went wrong.
Yeah.
I would have rather cut out Blake fighting the Borbatusk, which was ultimately kind of pointless in the long run. Just cut that whole thing out and just make one of the shots look decent.
Oh, God.
In episode 10.
I completely forgot the Borbatusk even happened in this season. You didn't...
And it's also really, really hyper well animated. Well, which I'm like, it's pointless.
It's hyper animated. Well animated. It's another one of those Sakuga moments where it's like... That one actually might work better than the Nevermore, because that is more about the heightened emotion that Weiss has. But the weird thing to me is the animation feels so slick and smooth that it doesn't come across like it should. It shouldn't be this really graceful thing. It should be this moment of Weiss. I liked how it was animated in the original, where it was Weiss being like off kilter and snappy, like she's used to being elegant and smooth, but no, she's being thrown off kilter because RWBY's being such a dunce, like, and
she's like yelling and she's stumbling and whatnot. Her sword gets all fucked up. Yeah,
it should be it should have been more angry, but it wasn't.
There's this thing, like, so the way I did my reviews, I just, like, I opened up Bandicam. Surprise, I use Bandicam to capture all my footage. I opened up Bandicam and I just spammed the take a photo button throughout the entire episodes. And for the fights that had, like, the really high Sakuga, like killing the Borbatusk or killing the Nevermore, every single picture that I captured was beautiful looking. It looked amazing. But when I did that for what I think was probably a better fight, fighting Nega Blake in episode 11, like half the screen captures I got were blurry or didn't look quite right. And so it makes you think, yeah, you can have a really beautiful frame, but put it all together, how does that look? And when every single frame is a masterpiece, it kind of is a lot on your senses.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting, because, like, there's a lot of comparisons, I think, that are going to rightfully be drawn between RWBY now and the hit new show Arcane that came out last year. Arcane is fucking black magic. Like, their animation team did such a fantastic job where you can literally choose almost every single frame from that show, and it's an artistic masterpiece. Like, it's a Renaissance painting level quality. I know there's probably one or two awkward
I
ones,
do agree, yes.
But, like, but that show works so well because they mastered their art style and they knew where to put the emphasis and everything. If you want a really damn good 3D anime, watch Arcane, because it's better than anything produced in America and anything produced over in Japan that I've seen in the last few years. It is, by God, one of my favorite shows of all time. It is insane how good it is.
And that's so... I'm gonna say, piggybacking off of that idea, not necessarily with Arcane, but I think, like, RWBY also does 3D better than a lot of anime that uses 3D models.
Yes. The only people that I've...
Beastars, for example.
I hate...
It looks fine.
Wait, what calls me about Beastars is that it's Studio Orange, the same guys that did Land of the Lustrous. Like, And Land of the Lustrous.
Is it really?
Yes, and they're gorgeous. And it's
no way.
I have hope. I have hope now because they're also doing Trigun Stampede. And having just finished Trigun with my girlfriend, I cannot wait. Like the moment in that trailer where Vash is being fired at and he just sidesteps both shots in quick succession. It looked so goddamn sexy. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, more of that, less Beastars. More of that, less Beastars. Because Beastars, I think
it's like
Beastar suffers from having too much fur, I think.
I think, well, yes. I think also, with anime in general, they don't do a lot of, like, squash and stretch with their models. And I think for something like Beastars, which is trying to be a bit more wacky, compared to, like, Land of the Lustrous, which is more serious and whatnot. And I think that's why RWBY does better than things like Beastars, because RWBY's models do, especially now in these later seasons, is that squashing and stretching for comedy and stuff, and even for action scenes.
Yeah, although it feels like they really still have gotten away from that even in RWBY. 'Cause there's a lot of people talk about it like, oh, it wasn't as well written before Monty died, and I always find that very wrong. It's like there's a lot of heart that was lost when Monty died, and that's always the way I distinguish it. Is like it feels more and more that RWBY is like an obligation, because the best written volume arguably is volume 4 or volume 6, like one of those two. But they have, there's something missing. There's a je ne sais quoi that is missing, that Monty brought, this raw, passionate energy that just suffused the entire project that just doesn't feel like it's there anymore.
Yes, the sort of spontaneity. Spontaneous, yeah. I just don't think I think after Monty passed, they were so beholden to try to hold on to the things he had already set in stone that they don't, like, waver from their path much. And I think that was something with the first 3 volumes, was that anything could happen. What is going to happen this episode? They're fighting a giant mech in the middle of the freeway. What the fuck?
Yeah, I think RWBY might actually be stronger at this point if we even get an entire volume without action. Like, if we get an entire volume of characters just interacting and trying to figure things out and trying to do things, you can dedicate so much more time to, like, just the dynamics. And we'll actually get to that. It's, I mean, one of the strengths of Ice Queendom. We'll get up to that. Yeah, we're talking about animation. Okay, so basically
3D models.
Okay, let's talk about, we should cap off the animation thing by talking about the animation industry and the way they've been, or the Japanese animation industry and the way they treat Blu-rays.
Yes.
Because that is the most disgusting, and this is only brought to my attention here. Because, like,
yeah,
I typically watch anime long after they've come out. I don't typically watch them as they're airing. It's very rare that I do so. So I wasn't aware this was a huge problem until, like, people really brought it out. And there's a great joke about Madoka Magica, where the fence just keeps getting fencier. It's wonderful. I
like, Maguka is suffering. We all know. We've all seen.
But I thought that was just like, oh, you know, in the original Air, they didn't have enough budget to, like, do the fancy stuff, so in the Blu-ray, they touched things up, and then in the movie, they really ramped things up because they got crazy budget. But...
So...
You go.
Madoka Magica is my favorite anime of all time. So I've actually spent hours, like, actually pouring into all the differences between, like, the original versus the touch-up versus the movie version. Like, when I was bored, I would just sit there and, like, look at this stuff up to see what it is. And the thing is, like, some things are cut or are longer or whatnot, but overall, it's still quality. Like, even in the very original version, it's still pretty quality. It's consistent quality.
I know people were saying, like, oh, the latter half of Madoka was really rough, too, and I don't recall anything like that. And now, again, I watched the Blu-ray. I'm pretty sure I watched the Blu-ray version of it on a perfectly legal streaming site. Actually, no, wait. No, I was watching that on Crunchyroll at the time. I did watch that on Crunchyroll.
Oh, yeah? My sister bought me a Madoka Magica on Blu-ray, and apparently it was expensive. But that's okay, because I bought her all of Cowboy Bebop, so...
I bought Rebellion when it first came out on DVD, because I love Rebellion, and it's like, oh, that cost me $40, thank you. Or it was maybe even more expensive than that, actually.
I got the Rebellion manga, and it's a lot harder to follow when it's a manga.
Oh, Christ.
But yeah, so like there's a lot of the faces that they show for Monica Magica that are like weird or fucked up. They're small. They're like standing in the background, or Kyubey's proportions will be kind of weird, but he's also an alien monster who doesn't have proportions,
Yeah, so it's they
minor fixes.
They knew where the important things lie. Would that be?
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it feels like this permeates a lot of the industry, though. It's like they cheap out because they know they'll fix it in post, but it's like you can't just. I really wish people would follow more of like the Pixar model, because Pixar does a really good job where they write, they pass it off to the directorial team, the animation team, and then the writers move on to a different project. And maybe they're brought in occasionally to like supervise one or two things, but they're mostly focusing on what they're focusing on. And like, I just really don't understand why you need such a stringent turnaround time. I guess penny pinching, but it feels so unnecessary.
I think it's because it's become common now. Like, they know they can get away with it because people keep letting them get away with it. And so when people can be like, oh, well, there's nothing we can do here in the West. Well, we are still consumers of this media. We're still the audience that is getting this product.
God,
like, it can start anywhere.
We're picking up bad habits from frickin' video game companies that picked up really bad, where it's like, oh, we can release an unfinished game, we'll just patch it 3 days later because everyone has internet, presumably.
And here's the scary idea, is that, what happens when, the West starts adapting those business practices? Like, you're talking about Arcane. What if Arcane came out and, like, episodes, like, the 3 in the middle just looked, like, completely rushed and trashed. And they're like, oh, we'll fix it for the Blu-ray.
I will actively set France ablaze. I will actively find their studio in Minecraft and threaten them in Minecraft with a good time in Minecraft.
Yeah. It's like we have such high standards in the West with especially animated products. Like even something as simple as like Steven Universe, which is much more cartoony and goofy. Even when Steven Universe had like wacky off-model faces, people tore it to shreds. So why does the anime industry get a pass? Yeah,
it's unforgivable. Like the practice, we're getting ripped off. Is basically what it is. We're getting. You could do so much better, and you're not. I just start developing a month, 2 months, a little earlier. You can make the time. You're in charge of that. You don't need to rush these things out. I mean,
it's a thing like. People were like, oh, are you upset that RWBY Volume 9 is getting delayed? And I'm like, no. Take all the time you need. Honestly, take as much time as you need to make it good. I'll wait 2 more years if I have to.
I'm not complaining. RWBY Volume 6 is going to get all the headlines. I'm happy about that.
That's what we're all really waiting for.
But yeah, so there's all of that. And it's just a bad practice. I don't know how we stop it other than just not giving them our money. Of course, I watch mostly on perfectly legal streaming sites, so I'm not directly contributing to it. But
yeah, I don't know. I just like more of an outcry to try to reach out to people like who are actually in Japan and. Like, they are the target audience, or whatever.
Yeah, I wonder how the show's doing in Japan.
I wonder that, too. Like, are these numbers people can find?
I don't know. I know that, like, on the shipping poll, like, there was not that shipping poll. God, no.
Ugh.
No.
We won't talk about that here.
No, but I mean, like, there's, like, is it over a MAL or something like that, where they rank, like, ships per the week? Like...
Yeah.
And, like...
There's a lot of Fire Emblem ships.
There's a lot of Fire Emblem ships. I know... Well, mostly in anime. I don't, like in the actual, like, ongoing anime season, they rank it per the week. And I think White Rose was on there briefly, but it hasn't anywhere near peaked. And I just know that it got completely blown out of the water by like Colas Recoil,
yeah. It's like when people were like sitting there going like, RWBY is the highest rated. The Japanese dub is the highest thing on Crunchyroll for Japanese audiences, and then I had looked into it for like a nanosecond, and I was like, oh, that's because no one in Japan is using Crunchyroll.
Yeah, why would
they don't? Why it's for Western audiences.
It's airing on their TVs.
Yeah,
like I would like to see the ratings compared to, like, I don't know, Isekai Oji-san, which is really fun.
Mm-hmm. Or just or just like anything really.
Spy X Family.
Because I don't know. We should move forward.
Yeah, we're lingering, and I think next up, so we have the other categories we have are character stuff, useless things, plot holes, things to like. What do we want to talk about?
Let's start with character stuff, because I think this is going to be a big one.
Okay. So yeah.
Let's start with Jean's nightmare.
Okay.
Because that was the only thing that was weird that got kind of like interjected into the middle of those recap episodes. On a fundamental standpoint, I get it and I appreciate it. I don't think we needed it in the long run, honestly.
Yeah, I think it was... The only thing that it contributed was establishing the rules of the nightmare and bringing in the nightmare itself for later use. All of those things could have... Well, I actually argue that the show should have actually been more about that than it should have been about recapping. I argue we shouldn't have had the recap episodes.
And I agree, as much fun as they were...
It's debatable.
It's so weird, because... it's so weird, because it feels like the recap is there for people who haven't seen RWBY. But everything else about the show feels like it is intended for people who have already seen RWBY. So I don't know why we have the recap.
Yeah, that's actually a good question to end us out on it later. But... Okay.
It doesn't establish enough about what the nightmare does, other than it makes you look different, which was their excuse for the girls to have new outfits, and how Shion's like hammock thing works.
Yeah,
in the long run.
But we'll get to that. The nightmare is a whole can of worms in it of itself. So yeah, Blake's plan... I'm just going down this list so my brain is... So John getting his nightmare, I think really what we should have had is 3 or 4 episodes, depending how you want to split it, because God knows episode 4 was just repeated in episode 5. You could have had 4 episodes of just establishing everyday life at Beacon, post Volume 1. Just like... And you could have established the tensions between characters. I said you could have had Weiss struggling with her racism, her inherent like just because you dedicate yourself to being not racist or whatever she does at the end of Volume 1, because that's just sort of that. The end of Volume 1 has its problems, and one of them is Weiss's weird declaration of his "I don't care." Like Weiss struggling with that and still maybe othering Blake in some way could have been an interesting dynamic you could have explored, and you could have just had have it all from Weiss's perspective, where she's narrating and talking about RWBY and Yang and Blake, have her linger on those
something
things.
To help set up the idea, what is it about Rain or Juniper that makes her think they're all silly? They are all silly and they remind me of my childhood. Let's see something. What did they do? Other than, because from the recap episodes, they barely see Weiss.
Oh god, you know what would have been great? Maybe they were doing something where they were talking to Pyrrha, and in some ways, that reminded her how she tried to talk to her older sister, but whereas her sister turned her away, Pyrrha was warm and coddling. You could have had comparisons there to really make it be this and it would have made the book make more sense, where it's her sister's more of a list of rules and guidelines that she follows. Immediately
that's
one
so
fix
weird.
Immediately changes so many contexts.
And that's the thing where it's you were so close, Ice Queendom. So if you just were more of yourself, you could have been better, rather than trying to desperately cling onto the coattails of the thing you're based on.
You should have had more of that kind of John's nightmare stuff going on, and I
guess I liked John's nightmare. I liked him being a small little baby bunny boy.
Everyone liked Bunny Boy John.
And maybe it could have been cool if he and Weiss were sick simultaneously. And then Juniper's trying to save Jean, Ruby's trying to save Weiss, and then Juniper does save Jean, and they pop out, and they're like, they're still handling Weiss? And it could have been, like, neat to have, like, a duality type situation.
Yeah,
no.
There's a very cookie cutter to, like, we establish what this thing is, it does its thing, we stop it, as opposed to, like, any kind of mingling of those plot points where it's like, we have to try and stop this thing, but we can't because we don't quite understand how it works. We'll get to Shion. Shion's a big problem.
Back to that thing of, like, their dialogue all feels like exposition. This could have been the great opportunity to see more into these characters, to understand their in-Dreamverse versions of themselves. But no.
I want to see Nora. Nagora.
What's that?
I want to see Nagora. Or Negative Ren. What is Negative?
Yes.
The dude saw his parents die in front of him. Can you imagine what his hellscape looks like? Like,
what would
can you imagine like the inside of Ren is in constant panic and turmoil? Like his
God.
outside is this. I don't know how to describe it. He's always calm and collected on the outside, but on the inside, he's always constantly at war with himself. There's so much that he has to explore.
I just picture, like, so you know how, like, lotus flowers, like lotus blossoms, they actually have, like, really huge roots? He's entangled within the roots.
Oh my god!
Just surrounded by war and fire.
Why are we not funding
horses?
This is already way better! Way better than what we got in the actual
Fixing
show.
RWBY.
No, I am not fixing Ice Queendom.
RWBY.
People are making that joke. I'm not fixing this damn show, damn it. More so because I've already like addressed all those plot points, and so it'd be like redundant.
It really is the thing that from all the comments I've gotten, it's just the best thing to come from Ice Queendom is the fan fiction material.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're gonna explore these ideas. And that's a weird thing about Ice Queendom, is I feel like this was supposed to be the big thing. Everyone would be talking about this, and every time, like, I posted a review, there was so many comments being like, yeah, I'm not watching it.
I know.
I'm like,
there is
so
such
weird.
a malaise about this show where it's just like, I guess it's there. Like, no one cares.
Yeah. And it feels like everyone would, because especially when when that first teaser image came out, and everyone was like, oh my god, what if it's going to be a real anime? And now it's here, and everyone's like, meh.
Well, because, like...
it's not for free, so I don't want it.
I think part of it, I think what really shot them was the whole dream within the dream thing. Like, the fact that it has no, like, consequence, I think what people were hoping for was, like, an outright AU. And honestly, I think that would have been better.
I agree. That would have been so cool.
Like,
oh my god.
I had this idea when we were talking about it. It's in one of the reactions, I think, but the entire idea of a show where you get different interpretations of the same story, but like it's different what if every time. And so like every season is like a retelling of the same cast. Like I that's right. I equated it to American Horror Story, but like good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't actually watch that show, but like I know people that like it, so. I've
seen like 3 episodes and I was not very impressed, I'm gonna be honest.
But like,
it seemed like an edgy Twilight Zone.
Yeah, the idea that this show could be reinterpreted, these characters could be reused. They all have the same basic plot points, but maybe one little thing has changed and it's radically shifting the entire world out of whack, and they have to live with that consequence. Like, that would be really cool to explore, and that's why the fan fiction for this show is actually sometimes spectacular. Like, you get some really talented writers that are like, I can take all these elements and make them work in this changed setting and make them really good.
Yeah, and it's and the fact that it's like weirdly just like stuck in the middle of volume 1, between volumes 1 and 2. There's no consequences. Like, the only consequence is maybe Weiss will die, but we know she won't, because there's this fucking 8 whole volumes after the events of this anime, and Weiss is alive. So it all just has this sort of like, it doesn't really matter mentality to it in the long run.
All right, but we're supposed to be talking about characters. We somehow got off onto like the core concept again because that's such an underlying issue of this show.
What? It's the idea from the very beginning was where it's fundamentally flawed? Who would have guessed?
Hey, Generabuchi, how's it going? Hey, you still enjoy it? Like, hey, look, I love the man's writing, but the man can have clunkers. I'm not denying that. But let's see. So let's talk character stuff. Nega Weiss. I really hate how they explain this. It's terrible.
It is. It really is. I wish there was more. Honestly. Like, I wish there was more to it. Rather than just Weiss wears an outfit and everyone calls her as Death.
But she's not actually...
That's all it is.
Like, it's really more like Weiss showing her true colors. That's all it really is. It's not negative Weiss. It's just Weiss and her...
Without any of the pretense.
Pretense. She's not trying to control... It's Weiss's id. Like, it's id Weiss. Mm-hmm. Like, that'd be a better name for it, is id Weiss.
That actually would be a way better name. And I know they're gonna go with Nega Weiss and
and then Blake is very similar. We get Nega Blake, where it's like... I don't even know. Actually, you know what? No, Nega Blake is completely baffling to me because she has, like, this whole thing about judgment. It's like...
Yeah, she won't shut up about judgment, and I'm like, I don't get, and
when was this ever part of Blake's story?
And this doesn't feel, because, so, like, Bunny Jean and Evil Queen Weiss feel like a glimpse at who they truly are when you look past the social masks that they wear in their day-to-day life. That's who they are. A scared little boy and a girl who thinks very highly of herself. But then you do Blake, and it's not...
I guess she's violent. I mean, like, maybe Blake just has these violent tendencies we never knew about.
It seems less like the girl behind the mask and more like the complete opposite. Everything she doesn't want to be. And that just goes against everything that we've heard about the nightmare. Grimm, like how it works.
Like, there's something to be explored there about how, like, maybe she was genuinely fearful in the original show of becoming Adam. But it feels like it didn't translate here. It feels like it should work of, like, she's scared of this part of herself that is violent and destructive, that just wants to lash out. But you nest it all in this whole judgment thing. It feels really weird, as opposed to, like, what if Blake actually turned into, like, a feral beast? That would have been, because, like, when you take this racial aspect, like, you have this whole racial aspect with the Faunus, and turning them into, like, you know, Weiss fears these monstrous beasts. She turns them into Grimm, and it's like, having Blake embody that through her own fears of herself, through what she contains within herself, that maybe it'd be an interesting question of maybe Weiss isn't as far off as she thinks. She's just wrong because there's a controlling factor that Blake is letting go. Like, there's something there to be said about, like, the nature of this racial divide, that maybe there is a difference between the two, and they're fundamentally seeing each other the wrong way, but, like, their fears are not necessarily unwarranted of each other. Like there are things to be explored there, and it feels like it's just, like, judgment. What does that mean?
Judgment! Judgment! What? Like, yeah, I know you're judging me. I feel the worst thing is nothing about Blake at all. From the entirety of Ice Queendom, leading up until her becoming Femi Adam, nothing about Blake hinted towards this was an aspect of her character. She was always very level-headed, always very, like, compassionate. She says multiple times, "No, I'm not racist. I used to be."
Well, this goes towards, like, the performance thing that I mentioned, because when she confronted Weiss, I remember that scene in the original being pretty fucking brutal, where she's like, Weiss Schnee, owner of the Schnee Dust Company. She's like, oh, finally, someone who recognizes. Also the owner of, you know, controversial labor practices. Yeah, like, she tore into Weiss. Like,
this air of, I disgust you, you disgust me.
I despise you. This brutal, like, you could feel that she just wanted to fucking bitch slap Weiss right on the spot, and you would feel that she would think it's justified. Like, like there is something to be there that maybe Blake has that disgusting violent side, but because of how she's portrayed in the show, we don't get that. We're relying upon the original RWBY to inform that, which if you're a newcomer to the show, it's not going to help.
It's just, when I think of, when you sit there and you think of the concept of the nightmare, and I thought of what would, like, Nega Blake be, I didn't picture her as Adam. I pictured her, like, in chains, enslaved, you know, something like that. The real fear of the fondness of being seen as less than just a second-class citizen, but as being seen as an animal.
What if her whole thing
And I don't think that
Oh, you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had the idea.
I just don't think the Adamification was a very good, like, way to end off the season.
No, I think it would be fine if it wasn't all around, like, judgment. It should have been, like, you should be enslaved, too. Like, you enslaved us. It's our turn. Because, like, I've always gotten that Adam is more of a racial supremacist in many regards. Like, he believes himself better. And it's like, that would be an interesting dynamic, that Blake has this sort of, like, this lingering element of Adam in her, that she sees herself as better than Weiss because she's morally superior. It's like, oh, I never owned slaves. I never had any of this going on for me. And now it's your turn to feel what we've suffered.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it creates a better parallel, too.
It just feels like, and if we were gonna do Nega Blake, I wish it was sooner. Rather, you know what? Cut it. As much as I love little baby Bunny Jean, cut that out and just have it be Blake and Weiss the whole time. See their dynamics.
It's just, speaking of John, him getting into the nightmare and being like, what was the point of John in this?
They did such a fucking shitty job explaining it. They're like, you're immune to it. They won't even see you. Oh, so what you mean is his sword and his cape is what's immune to it?
Was it even his cape? I didn't even get that from the cape.
People said that, and, like, I guess it's because Yang at the end was running around with it, and Blake's vines wasn't getting to her. But I don't think so.
I thought it was more she looked better in the cape than John did. Also, God, why did John get special treatment when it came to his outfit and his equipment? Because, like, everyone else came in with, like, RWBY came in with an altered crescent rose. She didn't come in with an altered crescent rose and her original crescent rose, but John came in with the weird super sword and his original weapons. Like,
it added nothing in the long run. It was only used as an excuse to get RWBY out of her nightmare, and if that is the only reason you have an entire character and an entire fucking sword in your story, that's bad.
God, we'll get to RWBY's nightmare. That's going to be a whole thing.
And some people were like, well, it's because in anime, usually there's some sort of male character for the Japanese boys to present themselves onto, and I'm like, that's dumb and not accurate. Where's the male character to project yourself onto in Madoka Magica, you know? Sailor Moon.
I'm just going to be I'm going to project myself onto Tatsuya, Madoka's little 2-year-old brother, because he's him and her father are the only males in that show. Actually, I think, are they the only men in that show?
There's I don't remember his name, the boy that Sayaka has a crush on.
Right.
Who's like an ass.
Kyosuke.
Total asshole.
Is it Kyosuke or?
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, and also, to some extent, I guess, you have the parents of Mami and the parents of Kyoko.
Sure. But they're not really
They're not really present. We see the father, sort of, in, like, paper mache.
Yeah.
And then, I guess, Homura was just raised by the Catholic Church, I guess. Did you know that? Homura's Catholic. That always caught...
I did know that. That's why her outfit looks like that. She looks like a nun. It
always caught me off fucking guard when I learned that. I'm like, wow, that's weird. But getting derailed because talking about a better show. So... Yeah,
John.
Pointless. Ultimately. Ironic considering the point of his sword saved RWBY. You could...
And, like...
And people need to understand that, yes, he saved RWBY. What we mean by pointless is they contrived that situation where RWBY could be saved in that way. It's like, it didn't feel like he meaningfully added to the discourse of the actual conflict, if that makes any sense. He was literally a plot MacGuffin.
Yeah, I think it would have been better if instead, like, cut John out entirely, and Ruby is in her own nightmare, and she realizes she's in her nightmare, and that's how she figures out that the Grimm is in the shadows somewhere. Like that, and that's when she goes and she's like, now I know how to stop the nightmare that's around Weiss's dress. It's in the shadows. I figured it out. That would have made sense.
We'll get to the useless things in a minute.
There's a lot of useless things, the whole show.
Another point I want to make, and this goes again to the performances, regular Weiss, and I commented on this a little bit earlier, before she even goes into the dream, Weiss isn't really Weiss. She is overly expressive, overly emotional, and showing weakness in front of Yang far differently than she would in the show. Like, I remember, like, they had the brief argument outside of the dust shop in the original volume, and Weiss was haughty the entire time. She was incredibly uptight. Like, you could tell that she had a piece.
She was very quiet. She had her back turned to Yang the whole time. She barely said anything.
She had a lump of coal, like gestating in her ass. Yeah. That's how you felt. In this, she's like, oh, boo-hoo, boo-hoo.
It's not fair. I don't want to be on a team with Faunus. I want to team with Para. Boo.
like I don't want this. Boo. Oh, what was it? You go.
It feels like a caricature of Weiss. Not even. Weiss has never acted that way.
It's a straight up like tsundere archetype.
And it's
wrong.
Weird. If we're gonna do this like AU thing, I understand changing Weiss a little bit to make the like story happen. But this just feels weird and unnecessary.
I feel like it's one of those moments where it's like, oh, we tried to thread in Japanese humor, and I'm like, that's not Japanese humor. That's just like I found it maybe a little funny, but it wasn't particularly interesting. Like it didn't feed the mind at all or the heart.
Mm-hmm. I think her anger not only would have made sense in that scene, but for the rest of her entire portrayal within the nightmare. She's a very angry, very defensive person, sitting there crying because boo-hoo. That just, it doesn't translate well into the rest of the story.
Let's see. So then we also have, like, Blake's plan. There's another episode 10 thing, and this is one reason that episode 10 is bad beyond the animation being shit. Was Blake's plan was somehow she knew enough about nightmares from where I do not fucking know. Like, oh, if we have two nightmares in the same dream, I'll be of equal power to Weiss, even though I don't think that's how that should necessarily work.
And then she's like, and it's like Jean, he gets to walk around freely, even though he doesn't. He gets to walk around freely. I'll get nightmarified, and then we can walk around freely. And then she doesn't. She just goes and attacks Weiss instead.
God. And then, like, the whole Blake and Weiss dynamic. Like, they had 3 different scenes where Weiss and Blake apologized to each other. It just was so weird. Because it feels like...
And only one of them was really good.
Yeah. It
just like RWBY proper, solving racism is not something you can do over the span of 12 episodes.
That's why this show had so much potential to it. It's like you had the span between Volume 1, where Weiss is very racist, and Volume 2, where Weiss is not very racist. You had that entire span of time where you could have explored how Weiss mellows out. Like, this could have been the mellowing of Weiss, and I think that was sort of the intent, but how it was handled was such an opposite direction. I would have rather we bypassed the whole, like dream thing. We don't need the fucking dream thing. We could have just had the characters at Beacon and have the struggle be between, like, maybe there's still tension between Weiss and Blake. They're a part of the same team. They have to get along. But Weiss keeps on being racist to Blake, and Blake's like, hey, that's not okay. You're being an asshole. And they keep coming to blows. You could have had, like, a sparring match between the two of them. You could have had this strain on Team RWBY as RWBY's trying to keep the team together. Yang's trying to keep the team together. Yeah. You could have had them each focusing on, like, like making a plan. Maybe they disagreed on how to handle it, and so you've strain between sisters. Like there are so many things you could have done.
And then and like have like more with like Sun is there, and she's like mean to Sun, and Sun is gonna be the type of person to just say what's on his mind. And then maybe also have Team Cardinal there, and when Cardin says something and Weiss is like, whoa, that's something I said before, and she's like, but I hate Cardin, and then she has like a whole mind melt moment. But no, this dream where nothing is real.
In this, Team Juniper wouldn't be fucking sidelined doing nothing the entire show unless John is there to be the dick insert, quote unquote.
And imagine like if Weiss is standing there and she's sitting there and Blake walks past and Weiss says some snotty kind of racist thing as Blake walks past, and Blake just ignores her and keeps going. And Pyrrha is sitting there and Pyrrha's like, that was really shitty of you. That would do a huge number on Weiss. If Pyrrha, the girl she's looking up to, is just like, yo, you're kind of a bitch. It's like, oh, fuck.
We'll get to it, but that is one of the things I liked in the middle episodes, is the parallels they drew between Pyrrha and Weiss. There's something there.
That went nowhere.
And it went nowhere, but it was nicer than nothing.
True.
Which is more than I can say for the White Fang, where it feels like they're just sort of there. And...
Other than being the reason Weiss is a racist,
I do. The White Fang is one point where early on I'm giving them props. It's like you literally put White Fang in Grimface. Like this is like the caricature like you would see in a racist mind of the Sambo, which for the record still exists in Japan. I actually have a picture on my phone of a actual sign that unironically used a Sambo caricature of a black person in Japan.
Oh no! No.
Like,
at college, I took 2 years of African American history, and so like racism in media is a thing that I think about a lot, and I try to approach it with as much delicacy as I know it deserves, and then I turn around and I see, like, anime characters like Mr. Popo or whatever, and I'm just like, why? Guys.
Wasn't Mr. Popo based on an actual djinn or, like, something in either Chinese or Japanese history? I'm pretty sure it's actually based on something.
I don't know.
I understand the caricature. I understand, like, the visual of it is unsettling, but I'm pretty sure that the design came from... There's, like, a lot of different inspirations for that stuff.
Yeah. Like, the one I always think about is, like, Jinx from Pokemon.
Yeah.
Which, as a kid, I never thought about it, because in my mind, it's not that Jinx has a black face, it's that there's nothing there. It's just supposed to be, like, an empty shadow. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And so I understand.
I thought they were just... I thought they just really didn't like Nicki Minaj, but, Too much.
Low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. I'm sorry.
No, when the grim White Fang showed up in Ice Queendom, for a second I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was like,
because I didn't register that they were half grim at first, and I'm like, whoa.
That was a really cool moment of like, oh yeah, shit, Weiss is really fucking racist. Like, God damn! Like maybe the show is willing to bite the bullet and explore this theme, because like it's a very sensitive subject, but sometimes to explore a sensitive subject, you have to be blunt. It's really counterintuitive at times.
Yeah, and if you don't address those kind of topics, then other people can't learn. You know?
Yeah.
But it's something that needs, like, you know, realism to really work out, rather than just, I thought about it and I'm not racist anymore.
Oh god, they botched that so badly. Like, how did RWBY have the chance to address a racist character trying to get over their racism, and they failed twice with the same character?
And they're like, oh man, we really fucked it up the first time. Let's do it again. And everyone's like, no, don't. Like, something I've realized in like current day RWBY, they don't talk about racism ever. There'll be like one or two side characters that maybe say something kind of off color. but they just don't talk about
it.
it.
You maybe get like one social commentary thing from like May Marigold. Like you get like one speech like that, maybe 2 per volume, but it's all lip service. It's very little of it is genuinely impactful.
It's a lot of look, we support this.
What I really hate, like kind of tangenting a little bit. What I really hate about the May Marigold thing is that's the first real conversation we've had with May, and it's all about her identity and her relationship with her family. It's like, oh wow, this
like,
person that I know
like,
nothing
I don't know
about.
this person.
Like, I don't know this person, and now it's like I'm learning your deep-seated like antipathy. It's antipathy.
Like the thing that Rooster Teeth has dubbed the only thing about your character is the only thing you're going to talk about. There you go.
I hope you like your representation.
And she doesn't get to explore. And that's the thing. I would have loved it if May Marigold did end up like really befriending, them during their whole mission in Volume 8, and then talking to them. And this conversation kind of comes up naturally, and then they can expand upon it more and discuss these things. But no, they just give us these crumbs and tell us to be satisfied.
It's so insulting. It really is. And like there are times where like they push narratives in the thing that I don't even agree with, but I sit there and I'm like, as someone who likes to try and steel man the opposition to his own positions, you did a shit job of that. Why would you do that? You're short sheeting everyone on that side of the aisle. Like,
yep,
it is the most insulting thing on the planet because it's like intellectually dishonest.
It's yes.
Oh.
Are we done talking about character stuff with Ice Queendom?
I think so.
Was that everything?
RWBY is a nothing character.
No, it's the thing. I expected it, and I was disappointed that it came true, because, like, with all of the, like, Japanese supplemental material, like, all of the mangas, when it comes to Ruby Rose, all of her fun is gone. She's just this generic, bland
protagonist character.
I do good because it's I do good and that's what I do. It's like, no, she's fun, she's goofy, she's dumb, she likes video games.
This actually transitions pretty nice, because one thing that they sort of got, they were on the edge of it. We were on the edge of greatness. We were so close. But the backwards gun. The moment that she discovered her gun was backwards, I'm like, oh, Gun Nut Ruby must be irritated that her weapon is built incorrectly now. Like, but there was none of that. Like, you had the opportunity, but you had none of that.
A whole, like, and it could have been so interesting for her to, like, be like, I don't like this, I like Crescent Rose, but also, I like weapons, so I kind of like this. Do I need to change Crescent Rose? And then, when Yang and Blake show up, it's like, why didn't your guys' weapons change? This isn't fair.
and then we get the explanation of why the backwards gun, and it is the dumbest fucking thing I have ever heard in my life.
It legitimately feels like a half, like, just they threw it in at the last second. Like, they didn't have a plan for her gun to look different. They just wanted an excuse for Crescent Rose to now be a snowboard rather than a scythe or whatever. And then they're like, oh, well, we need to put that into the plot. Otherwise, people will be confused. Like,
remember when everyone thought this was going to be an AU and that would explain all the weird, like, character choices? Like, oh, this is, the, like, if Weiss never went to Beacon or something. Or, like, if the main girls never went to Beacon, that sort of thing. But no.
Nope. Like, it's a dream world. RWBY's entire outfit changed. I can imagine something like her weapon would change without needing... And who, like, did Weiss decide that? In her dreamscape?
Apparently Weiss...
Did Weiss in her dream know that it's the shadows? And
Weiss subconsciously somehow knew that the nightmare hides in shadows. She knew that RWBY at some point would get infected and would need to shoot her own shadow. Knew that RWBY would be facing in such a way that the shadow would be behind her, because that's how light works. And then she turns around anyway to shoot it.
And I know, oh my fucking god, I was so pissed off. I was like, shoot it behind you. That's why it's there.
Like, that would be kind of a cool piece of dream imagery if the entire time we watched these characters, no matter where they were standing or oriented, their shadows were always behind them. That would have been a cool little detail that we could have picked up on. But no, the light follows naturally. And so it would have been cool if, in order to actually shoot it, she had to actually fire it behind her, because the shadow would always be behind her. Like,
kind of like a Medusa type situation where you're just looking at the reflection. Like, you can't face it, you have to face away from it.
But it creates, that's one level of stupid gone, because we still have the first level of stupid. How did Weiss know Ruby would be infected? You can't predict that.
And it's like, when I made my review, my thing was, it's just because Weiss doesn't get Crescent Rose. The way I worded it was, the way Weiss sees Crescent Rose
backwards.
It's some ass backwards gun thing that Ruby rides around on. And so, yeah, it would be ass backwards, taking, like, that concept literally. But no, there was a whole triggity trick to it.
It's so pointless in the end, because none of it mattered. And that goes for so many things in this show, like the relics.
Yes. When she started destroying them all, that's when I was like, I guess these aren't as important as I expected.
What did they do? What was their stated purpose? Because I could never actually find that in any of the recordings.
The only thing they did was they would help. It's basically like the keys in Legend of Zelda. The little keys to open locked doors. That's basically it. They would move the Ouroboros hallway so they could go through, and then they would move the vines out of the way of the final door so they could go through. That is the only thing we saw any of the relics actually doing.
But they had the relic when the vines crushed one of the relics. Why would the vines move out of the way of it?
Because,
and not only that, but like Ruby was cured of her nightmare, so she had the immunity thing, and that's why I thought the vines moved out of the way. It's like they can't choose their plot points. It's so
and like and then there was the thing of all right. So the relics were in places that you think would be related to where the girls go. Like, the purple one was where the Faunus people are supposed to be. The red one is where Ruby's bed is. But then the yellow one is with the Sillies. But Yang isn't
with the Sillies. It's weird.
So...
maybe it was John and Weiss just doesn't... Yeah, actually, that would make more sense. Weiss paid more attention to John than she did Yang this entire show. Like, I don't even know if she registers Yang's existence, if I'm being frank.
And honestly, having the 4 relics, they all do the same exact thing. I thought it was just like Maiden powers. I was like, oh yes, they'll all be slightly different. No.
Well, I thought that was going to be like a hint at the relics in the actual show, where it's like you got to gather all 4 together for some reason, but then you started destroying them, and it's like, well, I guess we're fucked.
Yeah, my favorite thing about the relics was the complete inconsistencies with their size. Sometimes they're like as small as your palm, and sometimes they're like as big as your fucking head. And I'm like, I get animation's hard, but we couldn't get this figured out.
That could have been something fun to play with, like things shifting sizes in dreams. Like, there's such a distinct lack of dreamlike imagery in this.
For being a dream, boring, simple, bland. Like, shifting perspective is such a neat concept when you're doing a dreamscape story. But the fact that it tells you just how creative they are when 3 of Klein's personalities are doors. Oh yes, the dumb one is a door, and the sleepy one's a door, and the shy one, they're all doors.
They're all doors. They all keep things closed. God, speaking of useless objects, there's the signposts, which I don't even know what those were. I guess it's supposed to be... This was supposed to be like, oh, maybe Weiss is conflicted about which way to take her life. Like, she is confused about which way to go. Like, does she want to change or not? Like, that was, like, I think the big symbolism of the signpost. They never addressed the fact of, like, if Team RWBY are going into her dreams and are possibly influencing it, how do they know they are making the right choice for Weiss? Why are they not letting Weiss make her own choice? Like, are they incepting Weiss into who they want her to be?
That's when you get to like the way too like you go so far deep into it where you just start questioning like all of it. Like, was this illegal?
When you're fucking with someone's head, there is heavy moral implications of that, and you guys are really
getting into like like, fuck, man. And with the signposts, like, they changed. Like, when they picked up the one with the sillies, it activated the baby Weiss army. And then when they got the one in the White Fang place, it activated the White Fang grunts to start wandering around. But the other two didn't do anything.
Just symbolism.
So I guess. And at one point in time, one of them started to, like, unfurl, but then that was the last we ever saw.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. We never came back to that, did we?
It feels like... It kind of actually feels like they didn't want to make an anime, they wanted to make a video game. Because this feels like a game mechanic. Oh, you get the thing, and it activates a different element for you to move forward. Great. Well, we're gonna make it an anime.
To be fair,
I guess we'll keep that.
Kind of a problem with RWBY is that they all operate by video game logic on all the different items they have to collect.
And yet, weirdly, none of their video games are ever actually good.
Yeah, like, everyone's looking at you, Arrowfell. I don't know if you can pull that off.
Oh, it's gonna be bad. I know it. It looks so boring. It
looks so boring. I feel bad for Way Forward. But then again, I like Shantae, like, aesthetically, storyline-wise, character-wise, but I've never gotten into it gameplay-wise.
Also, those 4 new characters that they have for Arrowfell, dumb. They look awful. Yeah. They're also all wearing, like, bikinis in the middle of Atlas. I'm like, guys.
Guys, it's snowy.
Why are you wearing a crop top, bitch?
So, Pyrrha, Nora, and Ren were fucking wasted.
They were. Why did the sillies not get to talk?
Why did they meow?
That's so dumb.
What was the meowing
Why did they meow? I thought that was gonna be a thing. I thought that was gonna mean something. Why did they meow? Weiss doesn't even have a cat. You know?
Look, Blake started wearing a collar, man.
Ooh. Monochrome shippers just, like, vibrating.
Yeah.
No, I thought the meowing thing was gonna mean something, but no.
It didn't. Pyrrha got a little more focus, but all the same, like, it just felt weird that, like, Nora and Ren did nothing this series. Like,
which I honestly expected, because they get shafted all the time, even in RWBY proper.
God, Nora and Ren show would be better
sadly.
at this rate.
I stand by it. I think Juniper are all more interesting characters than all of Team RWBY, without a doubt.
Oh, God.
Including Oscar as the extra P in Juniper. I think they would be more interesting main characters.
That's a bold take, considering I think Oscar's about as interesting as Wet Toast. But everything interesting I hold about Oscar is that he's possessed by Ozpin, and it's only until, like...
At least he moves the plot forward without having to be told, hey, RWBY, go to Atlas now. Okay.
No,
and then
he
she
doesn't.
gets there, it's like, why am I here?
Literally, Ozpin had to get him off his sorry ass and moving. Like, he doesn't even do that.
True.
It's Ozpin that moves the plot forward. It's not really him.
But he's inside of him.
Ozpin is inside a little boy.
We can't.
No, we have to phrase it like that. We have to phrase it like that.
That's the intended way to phrase it. That's what they wanted. Ice Queendom Pyrrha is so disappointing to me. Because the only reason she does anything is because Jean randomly grabbed her hand and just started dragging her around with him. Like this sad...
simp that he was.
Yeah. Like, she might as well have been a Pyrrha body pillow for all she ended up doing.
Either, because, like, this is before he had the feelings for her. So what, she's his mentor is like, you have about as the same relationship with her as you do as Ren and Nora at this rate.
But you gotta grab Pyrrha. It's so weird, because Pyrrha seems like she should play a huge role in this kind of story. For being, like, Weiss... And Weiss loves Pyrrha. She's obsessed with her.
We were robbed of the confrontation between Pyrrha and Weiss. Because, like, the thing that you described in, like, the story that we should have had where, like, Pyrrha calls Weiss out, this was that story! Mm-hmm. John should not have been the one to enter. Pyrrha should have been the one to enter. And, like, this is one thing that I really liked, was, like, the parallel of, like, Weiss sees in Pyrrha what she sees in herself as this caged animal. This person that's held back and held to a high standard to sing the songs. Like, There's so much there, and then to have Pyrrha come out and be like, "You think I'm just like you, but I'm nothing like you. I'm not a racist piece of shit, Weiss. Clean the fuck up."
I don't revel in my fame. I want to be small. I want to be normal. Like, it's something like that. And something like even in the recap episode, when Weiss is talking to Pyrrha, in RWBY proper, Pyrrha seems not too thrilled with the conversation, but more bored than anything. And in this one, you can see the hurt in her face as she's like getting all the attention turned to her. Why didn't we explore that?
Why wasn't Pyrrha infected with a nightmare? That
exactly.
would have been so much more interesting than John.
And it's like, and she dies soon after the events of this story. Pyrrha's done, and we can't develop her.
She has
anymore.
less than a year of life left.
You have a brief opportunity to actually give Pyrrha more development than she ever gotten. Do it! Why did you not?
Oh God, it's such a missed opportunity.
And it makes because Jean has a crush on Weiss, but Weiss hates him. So that, even if he stayed as a silly, if he was the silent one being dragged around the plot unnecessarily, that still could have been kind of interesting to see Weiss see that version of Jean and come to terms with it.
God, there's so many. But I suppose with those dreams and everything, the missed opportunities all comes down to the biggest issue of all, which is Xion, the coins, and the doors.
Yeah. Again, something that feels like video game mechanics.
Oh yeah, that fast travel.
Here's your coin. You can do these things. Yeah. Fast travel. You can ask for help. Get a map. Woo. That's all video game mechanics. In an anime, it makes no sense.
Actually,
it's like when I watch like the Persona 5 anime, and it's like, this is one of the things from the game. And I'm like, great. It's doing nothing in the story for
God,
the
I
anime.
remember I dropped that after episode 1.
I made it further than I was expecting it to get better, but I made like 5 episodes in, and I'm like, this sucks. And Xion in general, pointless. She could have said, for being the nightmare expert, Xion said nothing of importance about the actual nightmare. Xion should have known that the Grimm hid in the shadows, and your gun is backwards because it's in the shadows.
Yeah, it's like there was nothing really. Xion was just a weird character because it ties into the plot hole that is the nightmare. If we are to treat this as a canon story, which is, holy shit!
Like,
what the fuck are nightmares, and how do you stop them before Xion exists?
And so, like, there is some overlap with semblances. Like, RWBY, Oobleck, and Harriet all have super speed. So you could theoretically be like, oh, there's other people whose semblances let them hunt, like, allow them to have other people enter other people's dreams, which is such a convoluted semblance.
It really is.
I feel like...
it was originally to see into people's hearts, and I'm like, but that's useful.
Okay.
I'm glad you're a great therapist now.
It's the thing where it's like, I feel like this could have been a machine rather than a semblance.
You could have just replaced Xion with a machine. It would have been way more interesting, and it would have gotten a lot of people less angry about whether or not he, she, they have pronouns.
Mm-hmm. Priorities with the internet. Also, it could have been Port. They have a already defined teacher at Beacon who is specifically teaching them about Grimm. We even see him in this recap. It could have just been Port the whole time.
It could have been.
Honestly.
It could have been. I want to know whose decision
I like
was.
Port.
Whose decision it was to create Xion. I want to know that person.
I can guarantee you it's someone who sat there, looked at Professor Port, and said, what if they were pretty, though? What if it was a pretty person? Port's not a pretty person who we can make a cutesy beverage for our RWBY cafe out of.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like, as much as I agree that it should have been Port has some baggage.
Port does have baggage, so I understand.
Even though he has a new voice actor, yeah.
I get it.
Could
I
have made it
understand.
Oobleck. I know
Could
Joel,
have.
and
He does history
I know
stuff.
the whole Joel leaving RT was kind of a controversy a little bit, but nowhere near as anyone else that left at that point. That was more of a mutual parting of ways. So,
You know what it could have been? Professor Peach, someone they mention in Volume 1. Glinda, when they go to the Forever Fall Forest,
Peach.
Glinda's like, I'm here instead of Professor Peach. And everyone, me included, is in there being like, I want to see that person. Could have been this.
I'm convinced, and I said this in the reaction, that Beacon has 3 teachers, and they just take turns dressing up as Professor Peach.
The thing, it sucks because I like Xion. I really like their design, especially.
I actually do not like the design. I don't think
Really?
I don't think it gels well with Ruby's world.
I think it's the hat. Because have you seen the fan-made animation Team Silver, I believe, is what it's called?
Been a while.
It's the one of them is like a little witch girl who has a little like battle axe and a chompy dude semblance. Do you remember that at all?
It's been a long while.
She has she also has like a witch hat, and the way it's modeled, it tilts up, and I think because that's the only way it could work with Poser, so it wouldn't clip through everything. And I think it's just Shion's really wide brim hat that looks so weird.
Well, I think part of it is that like the design of characters in RWBY, despite having some impractical edges to it, has always had like this kind of modern mystique to it. Like it feels like fantasy modern, but Xion feels like anime fantasy, if that makes any like concrete sense.
That makes sense. I get it.
It sticks out to me, and like, to be fair, RWBY has had its fair share of weirder designs occasionally. I'm trying to think of one that comes to mind in the actual show.
A lot of the combatants in the tournament from Volume 3.
They had some wacky designs. Oh, fucking Carmine Escalados. Fuck her.
That's such. Oh my god, I hate her design.
I want Yang. We have Yang at home. Yang at home.
Yeah, Yang. I have the book, After the Fall, or whatever. I have that, and I was reading it, and I got to the point where it gets to Carmine, or whatever, and she's just described as, like, extremely stylish, but she's wearing chainmail as a t-shirt. And then I was like, so you took those words and made the ugliest looking character.
I think it might be the other way around for, like, is it E.C. Myers is sitting there and I'm like, how do I describe it? She was extremely stylish and wore chainmail. Yeah, that's how I imagine the design came first.
I think the other thing with Xion, just the color palettes in general, like the very pale skin, very
that was the big thing.
Hair.
Is that she looks like they look like Salem.
A little bit,
and
yes. I remember a lot of people was like, suspicious.
Yeah, so we all thought that like maybe they were going to be the big bad at the end. That would be kind of crazy. Turns out they were the actual nightmare, a unique Grimm.
A lot of people were like, yeah, Xion's going to be evil. And then it got to the end and it's just like, no, they're just here. They're having fun.
But yeah, the nightmare itself is such a plot hole in terms of RWBY, because like this is a Grimm that specializes in stealth and like subterfuge.
Yeah.
And like I know there was the chill, because I looked that up after Tom talked about it on the podcast. But nightmares, how do you stop them if you don't have a semblance on hand like this? Like every other Grimm you can fight and kill, but like this thing, does it repopulate by like how does it repopulate? Does it spread? Is it like a disease more so? That's kind of scary. You have a Grimm disease?
Yeah, that's a neat idea, but the entire way to go around it just felt like weird, like stretching and bending of the rules to excuse a dreamscape, which we didn't even need the story to be a dreamscape in the long run. It just feels so weird.
Well, and then the mechanics of it are so inconsistent across the board. Like, you can have 2 of them in the same dream. You can have 3 of them in the same dream. Somehow RWBY goes into a dream within a dream while infected, but her dream isn't anything like Weiss's or Blake's or John's, but then also Weiss from Weiss's dream can come into RWBY's dream to talk to her, but it's subconscious Weiss, not actual Weiss. What is happening?
And then Blake's dream becomes just mixed with Weiss's. It weirdly tries to, like, quantify dreams, which is something that doesn't actually have, like, capabilities we can determine in reality.
Dreams are such a dangerous route to go down in terms of storytelling. And I've always, I say this again and again, but like my idea for how I would like, if I were brought on the RWBY volume 10, let's say, how do I fix RWBY? Well, I have a character wake up from a coma, but like it needs to be like that's how I fix all the plot inconsistencies and things. It's a character that was there present for most of these things. Maybe there's some machine connecting dreams or whatever, Inception style. And like they need to go into the dream to get an important piece of information. And like there's an entire volume inside of a dream that's recounting memories. So it's a little more concrete than a regular dream. But they're trying to find specific things inside those memories. And so like the dreams are starting to collapse. It's starting to like fall apart. And you get these weird things going on, but like at the end of the day, there's a purpose to it. It feels like there's no purpose to these dreams.
It's just excuses for them to be in unique outfits, really, at the end of the day.
Unique outfits and for Weiss to be a dictator.
For something kind of...
Which
I
is
don't know.
really weird.
And
it's really weird because her main motivator in this series, as far as we know, is Nicholas Schnee.
Yeah, which I really did actually love actually getting to see Nicholas. This is the first time he's in motion, and it's cool, wow. But you think that would play... It implies it's such a big role for Weiss, but nothing much comes of it.
Well, it's really weird because, like, his words are very warm and fatherly. He's this very, very much like, savor the life you have, savor the people in your life, build a castle from your friendships. And it's like, that's very wholesome, very heartwarming advice. And it's like, but this entire fantasy world, this entire dream is built around Big Nicholas, this overbearing totalitarian figure that controls every facet of your life. And it's like, but that's not Nicholas, like as far as we know. That's Jock.
It could have been an interesting thing where she realizes she's twisted his words to mean the opposite of what he's really trying to say, but we don't get to explore that.
Yeah, it's literally just introduced at the end to be like, oh yeah, by the way, she had a really good relationship with her grandfather. It's like,
hey, we keep saying Big Nicholas. This is why. There he is. Like, oh,
what would have been better, I think, is to show how Jock perverted the memory of Nicholas Schnee. Like he took this heartwarming advice that Nicholas passed down to his granddaughter and twisted it into something that it's not and manipulated Weiss through it. And like, you could even have Weiss come to terms that maybe Nicholas was a good person, or like, but because of the time that he lived in, did some bad things, like the whole faunus slavery thing. Controversial statement as it is, there were probably quote-unquote morally good slave owners that were doing evil things because they didn't realize that slavery was a moral wrong. Like, you get, that's an interesting dynamic to explore, that someone that
is, and this is like the only time I could ever think of a story even attempting to touch on something like that.
Yeah, I think you have an opportunity that so many stories don't.
And I think at the joy of hindsight without having to time travel necessarily. But I think the thing at the end of the day is that it's Yang that sees that moment with young Weiss and Big Nicholas, like, talking to each other. Yang sees that. And I don't know why Yang had to see it, other than being a vehicle for the audience to get to see it. Weiss should have been in there to be reminded of this moment at some point in time, because it meant nothing to Yang in the long run.
But there's a missed opportunity here, because, like, outside of, like, maybe a very controversial Hollywood film, could I see, like, them exploring it. And, like, what's nice about RWBY is that you can explore these controversial topics in a fantasy world where it doesn't have to reflect anything of our reality necessarily beyond the core issue at play.
Yeah.
Like if a Hollywood film were to tackle this concept, it would be, you know, the 1800s plantation owner who, like, you would learn he has a heart of gold, but he still has slaves, and it's like what does that mean? What is it? Where does that come from? How does that play into thing? But no, you have you have this safe distance from reality where you don't have to like involve the real world issue. You can nest it in this fantasy where like even if you mess it up, if you fuck it up and somehow end up saying, oh yeah, slavery is good or something like something stupid like that, if you mess up with that, then you can just say it's a fantasy world. I guess in their world it's fine, but it's not really reflective of our reality. Like, you have that opportunity to really try and explore it, and if you fuck up, you have the parachute, but you didn't take the opportunity. You didn't do anything with it.
And as an overall, like, expanding from just the Nicholas Schnee aspect, but also just her whole family. Like, I wanted to see, we're in this dreamscape where, miraculously, we get this really cool opportunity where Volume 1 Weiss gets to interact with her mother, father, sister, brother, these late game players who we don't see for another fucking 4 years. But we get to see how she could interact with them here in Volume 1. What's their family dynamic like? What would she say in these moments? How do they treat her? This actually could have been a really great chance to see what kind of abuse Willow partook in.
That was one of the things that like I really liked about the first episode, is that when she's walking on her way to the test, we got the family dynamic out of the way real quick. Like it was super effective at just like, here's Winter, here's how she treats Weiss. Here's Whitley, here's how she treats Weiss. Here's Willow, here's how she neglects Weiss. Yeah. Here's Jacques, here's how he's an abusive asshole. Like,
and it's like, that's the whole point. That's the whole core of Weiss's problems, is her family. And then in the dream, her family might as well not be there. They don't do anything. Nothing.
I guess there's some goofy things with Jacques' statue goofing right around going, I want to play with my family. But it's just like, it's more comedic than anything meaningful.
I think the biggest crime was Winter being a book. And that was it. Like, and I get the idea of like, Winter plays by the book. She's militant and organized. But that's so boring.
I know, I like it that like, the one source of warmth in her life is her sister. Like, that's the only person that's shown her affection. So so Weiss lives by her word like a Bible. Like, that's an interesting dynamic to take, but at the same time, because her sister, she has such a praise for her sister, there's this distance between them. So literally her sister is a book to emulate. It is not a person to get along with. And like, I
can get that.
There is some symbolism there to like. And we go back to like, what was the idea that we just had earlier where it makes more sense how she treats her sister's words? We had an idea like an hour ago.
Yeah. This podcast was only going to be an hour long.
Yeah, we did. There's a lot to talk about here. We're nearing the end. We're in the plot hole segment, so
I don't know. It was just especially Jacques and Willow. Jacques didn't do anything. He just he didn't even, like, I wanted to see that oppression that she gets from her mother and father, and it just, like, neat ideas, but disappointing, because seeing those actual character interactions would have been much more interesting to me.
Think of this. If you had started with, like, Weiss taking a phone call from her father and having to explain, like that would have been a great framing device for, like, a brief recap of, like, Volume 1, where Weiss is having to explain, why aren't you the leader of this team? And Weiss has to be like, well, you see, my team leader, she's a prodigy, and she's like looking over at like RWBY, who's like balancing a pencil on the tip of her nose, and it's I'm on there with her sister, who's incredibly strong, and just like maybe and like
Yang's just like
and
punching a TV.
We have a diversity hire. It's like how would you explain a faunus on your team to Jacques?
Yeah. The fact that only that first episode was the only real look at the real Schnee family. But, like, even at the end.
What would be great is if at the end of the story then, you show that Weiss has grown, and, like, if you made the entire story more so about her relationship with Jacques, and how she's, like, coming to, like, bash against him, rebel against him a little bit more. Where at the end of the volume, she gets a call from him. She chooses not to take it, like we see in volume 3, and then goes off to hang out with Team RWBY. Like,
there you go.
That would have been
a great
way more capping to things. like,
yeah,
it would have been so much stronger,
Just like with many, it feels like it was flawed from the beginning. And everything that's like, oh, that's an interesting idea, there are better ways to enact on that interesting idea than the dream.
What sucks the most is that to get out of the bad situation you put yourself in from the bad idea, you had to do an even worse idea. And that would be, hey, I have laser eyes. I slammed the pause button and I just like stared at my screen as Ruby's eyes were glowing silver. And I'm just like, I don't, what? So this is the second time she uses it, and she actually doesn't remember the first time she uses it. And
yeah.
Which is a problem in of itself. How does she not remember these things? It didn't layer out on her ass like it did the first time, which you could have made an excuse that why didn't it layer on her ass any of the other times? Well, it's because the first time was like particularly traumatic. It was like a breaking through of a dam or something like that. No, she used it before.
No, we learn through some other supplemental material that she's been blasting eye lasers since she was like 2.
It's so insulting that they couldn't come up with a better solution for her coming out of the nightmare than to blast the eye lasers.
No emotional thing, nothing she could have learned throughout the actual story. Nothing like, no connection with Weiss to help her get out of a tricky situation. No, not even the relic. Not even the damn relic that she had in her, like, fucking pouch on her chest helped her in that moment. She just, eye lasers. Deus Ex Machina eye lasers.
It's just, oh, God.
And I don't like the silver eyes to begin with. Like, I think they look bad. I think it's a bad idea. I think it was a cop-out because they didn't have anything to do, and then they're like, well, I guess we can expand on this, and I think it's bad, but I think this makes it so much worse.
Frankly, though, I feel like Silver Eyes is one of those ideas that Monty had. I feel like it's a Monty idea. I don't think it's people really want to defend, oh, things were better written with Monty. No, they weren't. Monty was not a good writer. Do not fool yourselves.
He had fun ideas, but then Miles and Carrie had to, like, take those ideas and desperately, like, twist them around to make sense in an actual plot-related
Literally,
sense.
he would just say, I'm gonna make a mech fight, and Miles and Carrie would be like, excuse me, what? It's like, you're fitting it in there somewhere. I'm like, oh.
Where are we gonna get mechs from?
Oh, let's just go steal them. No, they didn't steal them. I'm pretty sure they bought them. But still.
I'm just gonna introduce this entire new character at the last second.
Neo, just throw Neo. But yeah, I'm the Silver Eyes, already not the greatest idea. We've had to work really hard in Volume 6 to explain the Silver Eyes. That's gonna be a whole, oh boy,
thing.
it's so just, it just makes it so much worse. I hate they had to bring it in. I thought, and that's the only reason they showed the recap the way they did, is that they needed specifically the things from the recap to show up later. It's just it's
lazy. It's just lazy. That's the thing. It's just fucking lazy. Even with their own, like, cutesy little idea of your gun is backwards, shoot your shadow, they still had to go the lazy route and use the Deus Ex Machina to do it in the end. That's so boring.
You know what would have been more interesting? Maybe the vines, when they capture you, they hold you in such a way that the thing is behind you. Like, that would be a better explanation. Because, it would be presumed that if RWBY came into the dream to save Weiss, and Weiss subconscious was like, you're trying to save me. Here, take this. You'll need it. Like, that makes more sense.
And it looks like it didn't even kill it. Like, she, recoils from her eye lasers, and then she runs around, and then she shoots it another 3 times, and then that kills it. I'm like, oh, so was not only dumb and shows up too early, but it didn't even do the thing it's supposed to do. Great.
I still can't believe, because, like, oh, did anything strange happen, RWBY? No, the power of friendship saved me. It's like, how? Why? Why do you think that? You were conscious the entire time. This, like volume 3, RWBY has an excuse. She passed out.
Yeah.
Presumably from the eye lasers.
Like, how did I get out of these vines? I don't know. I don't question things.
everything makes it.
There's a lot of really great
now
plot holes.
On that, we're running really late on this, but like let's try and get to a few things that we like, because there's a few things that I liked. Just superficially, Tiny Weiss is adorable, and what she symbolizes is great. Like her little symbol, it's awesome.
The Baby Weiss army, phenomenal. I loved their like dumb like proto version of her rapier.
Yes,
where it's just so like literally.
It's like what's a?
It looks like a toy.
It's a Hasbro toy. It's great. And the fact you see like Pyrrha using it.
Yeah, seeing like children versions of the characters is always fun, and this is such a fun direction for Weiss to go with, especially with the things they say. They're like little bratty, like, I want to have fun, I want to run around, I want to do this, I want to do that, and it's like, this is a side of Weiss we would never get to see.
They grow like, and the thing is, like, what's great, it's like the symbolism works on all cylinders when they're on screen, because when they're outside, it's like, oh, this is great, they're having fun, but then they start growing and and becoming more demanding and brattier, and it's like, oh, she keeps these chained up for a good reason.
So yeah, it's actually that one of the best things of Ice Queendom, honestly.
It's almost like you present two sides to the same coin, that these things are really good, but they can also be really bad. It's like there's something there. I've already touched upon the Pyrrha analogy and how well that works on all cylinders. I don't know if I need to touch more on that.
I don't think so. I think we've discussed Pyrrha enough.
The train, when they're going into the city and they're just like, we'll just make new tracks. That was really fun. Like, it could. That's how you use a dream scenario. It's like, fuck reality. We're gonna do our own thing. They should have taken it further. It should have like ramped off into the middle of the city like a fucking like motorcycle. It would have been
giant wings spout from the train and it flies into the sky.
It would have been amazing, crashing into like the big Nicholas statue. But
something. It was cool.
But more meaningful is a twofold thing. Team RWBY being at the heart of their own damned show.
Yes.
That is such an important thing, and it's so sad that we have to make... When Miles and Carrie, I think, said it, they would have later... They would have renamed the show Remnants, I think. I'm pretty sure someone said that in the development crew.
Makes sense, honestly, because Team RWBY, they're not really the protagonists. There's shared protagonism between them and also all of Juniper and Oscar and Crow and Maria and Penny and all these other people.
For as flawed as this story is, warts and all, at the center of it the entire time was RWBY, Weiss, Blake.
Yes, and
Yang is there. She's emotional support, I guess.
She does what early Yang does best, which is be there and say something really sweet every now and then. Yeah, and she has really cool fight scenes. That's the most we can ask of her.
Well, except for episode 10 and 11, where she's riding around.
Everyone got hurt with that one. Of all the Japanese voices, I liked Yang's the most.
Yes.
I thought she was cute. I like how she would say English words all like a lot of the time. Like she would say "wow" rather than "sugoi," and I was like, "That's cute."
That is one of the lines where like I like to start my day off with a Yang, and like then she says it again with the exact same delivery and enthusiasm, and it's like you can tell like with the like. The way it's animated there, it's like one of the moments where like the comedy shifted. Like that's where I think the comedy like shift was right. Where like I like to start my day off with a yang, and everyone groans in the American version. In this one, no one acknowledges her, and she's like trying to get a reaction out of people, and it's like, all right, that one kind of works. Delivery needed a little better timing, but you kind of got me with that one.
That one was probably the best one out of Ice Queendom. But yeah, it was great just seeing them just talking to each other, just being there, developing. Like being my favorite, friends. It's such a small, like, minuscule moment that I can't even really expand upon it. But it's when Ruby and Yang are in their special chamber behind Sleepy Klein. And then Blake shows up and she's like, all right, I'm here, losers, let's bounce. And they're like, did you pick the lock? And Blake, like, looks at her sword and she puts it behind her back and she's like, yeah, is that a problem? And like, this is such a cute moment between these three girls.
I thought the moments at the very end where these girls are just like hanging out, you know, Ruby and Weiss are writing letters like at the same time, and even though they're not in the same bunk or anything, it's kind of this like weird similar thing they do. And then you have Blake and Yang playing video games. We never see Blake play video games. That's so interesting.
I know.
Me. It's like, and she's terrible at it, and it's great.
And then she brings this stack of books. It's like, now my thing.
Yeah, it's like I'm all happy for the bee shippers getting that moment for them. Like, that's so cute. Like,
it's the thing where the way people talk about what they like about Ruby Chibi is seeing them just interacting with each other. And this is what I prefer. Rather than Ruby Chibi's like insistence on trying to tell like Sunday comic style jokes, is just them just interacting with each other.
Yeah, just being normal Ruby people. Casual. Just make that an entire series of just like Team Ruby hanging out during their Beacon days or in Mistral or in Atlas.
They could have honestly cut every single fight out, get rid of all the dream shit, and just have the literal everyday lives of Team Ruby and their friends, and I would have been so pleased.
A Ruby slice of life would have been amazing.
Yes.
Like there are two routes that I always say Ruby could have gone down. It could have been a slice of life with an action twist. Like, occasionally you get these cool action scenes going on, but it's mostly these characters, like, learning to be huntsmen in this world that has monsters in it. Nothing big, grand, or epic. Just these characters being characters, having a good time, and occasionally Roman Torchwick or Cinderfall show up to create some shenanigans. Like, you could have had that.
Team Rocket style, I'm here to steal your Pikachu.
Yeah. Or alternatively, you have the serialized style that they've ultimately fallen into, but like it feels like disjointed from what they originally had. So it's just It really does. Whenever anyone says Miles and Carrie are bad writers, I always have to disagree with them because, well, I think they aren't the greatest. They made these characters. They're the ones who set the skeleton up for these characters to still be fun and exciting, even in this lackluster anime spin-off. When they just get to actually be their characters. They're very, very fun. Sometimes. I feel like they struggle. Like, there's a lot of personality that's been robbed from RWBY in recent years.
Yes.
In Volume 8 and like, I mean, and in Ice Queendom now, there's not too much to RWBY ultimately. They almost had something and they didn't. And she lost her pep in this show. That's to be said.
Did. She really did. And I think that's part of why Lindsay's performance in the teaser feels so off, is that Lindsay's a naturally upbeat, fun person, just like RWBY, and trying to, like, make her all stoic and stern.
I'm so angry at Lizzie. And Lindsay, Lindsay. She said that she prefers the post-Volume 3 RWBY voice, where she's high and squeaky. I'm sitting there like, no! Volume 1 was best! Why?
Doesn't Lindsay use they/them pronouns?
I don't know.
I think I remember. I don't remember for sure.
I don't know. Like, the last time I've heard anything about Lindsay was back in like Volume 3's like commentaries.
It was before Lindsay had a child. Was the last time I heard about Lindsay Jones.
But yeah.
So yeah.
There's
because I really love Lindsay's performance. Like, Volume 1 RWBY is great. I love that performance. Everything, like, Volume 4 on, where she's just this screechy, like, it sounds like a guy pretending to be a little girl. Like when teenage boys pretend to be little girls, and they have this, like, nasty, kind of insulting tone to it. It feels like that.
It's so... Yeah, it just doesn't... We're getting off the negatives. We were talking about what we liked.
Sorry.
No, that's my fault too.
Just like, this is my talking voice. I'm talking. This is my RWBY voice. Isn't that great? But yeah, seeing Team RWBY as friends, it's always a fun part. That's why, even though I say Ice Queendom isn't very good, it's still good in those aspects. Seeing them be together.
Yeah. Oh, for the record, Lindsay is they, she. So.
They, she.
Yeah.
Nice.
They.
It's always good.
I got my bases covered.
Yeah.
Not getting canceled today. Tomorrow is another day, though. So, always gotta worry about that. All right, so. That's about where we line up. The next. We're kind of winding down here. The Monty thing. I was really insulted by that, like, 4-second black screen to Monty. It felt like such an afterthought. I
get the sentiment, but also I think even just having like how RWBY proper does it at the end of the opening, it says created by Monty at the very end. I think that's way more beautiful and poignant than just this thing thrown at the very, very end after all of the credits.
You know what would have been really cool? If maybe they had some behind-the-scenes thing where he was trying to arrange this. Because I remember they started talking about this in 2015. And I think he was in the initial process. It would be great if they could find some footage of Monty talking about how much he wanted this to be an anime. Like, an actual anime. If you could find that and have that clip. And have it, like, at the very end be in loving memory of Monty that would have hit so much fucking harder, I think.
Or even, like, if you're gonna do it right. Have the very first shot before anything, just it dedicated to Monty. Or at the end of every opening sequence, when it says RWBY Ice Queendom, underneath that at the bottom, just have, say, created by Monty. More than just at the very end of it all.
Well, at the very end, they had, like, this, like, poetic speech or this poetic writing or whatever. No, just say, in loving memory of Monty and then have his signature. Yeah. Why was his signature not in there?
That was another, I don't know. It
felt weird. It felt weird, is what we're trying to say. It's like, I get that they're trying to be respectful, but it feels like they went about it the wrong way.
Yes. It felt more performative. Not even performative, just like an afterthought. Like, they're like, oh, we should throw this in here. And it's like, if you're gonna do it at the beginning. Do it front and center, you know? Do it in a way where it's just simple and respectful, not shoved at the end, yet trying too hard. I don't know.
Yeah.
A nice thought, but whatever.
All right, well, final questions. Is this canon?
I would say it's done in a way you could say yes or no comfortably. Like,
Are we going to see Shion again? Are we going to see the nightmares ever again? I don't think so.
Expect to ever see a nightmare again. People are like, there's going to be a second season. And I'm like, even if there is, I don't think it's going to be a nightmare thing. Like, I really don't.
Honestly, I would love to see what a second season of Ice Queendom does. I don't know if it would be called Ice Queendom. It'd be kind of cool if maybe from here on in we get different seasons of RWBY and they just, like, fill in gaps in the timeline. That'd be
I think that'd be super cool. Especially if we got past the Beacon stuff. There's so many things from, like, Volume 4, 5, and 6 onward that we could expand upon.
We joke that this should have been Volume 5. This should have been, like, placed during Volume 5 to explain what they were fucking doing in that house the entire time.
Yeah, that boring old house. Ugh.
And Shion would have made more sense. They had, like, this mystical, like, secret like Asian wizard vibe going on. Like you could
True.
do something like Mistral's like Asia land in
yeah. Each continent has one thing: cold, desert, Asia.
Yeah, cold, desert, England, Asia.
That's the thing. If we saw Shion again, like RWBY needs everyone to do the spirit bomb and give the energy for her, and Shion was one of the ones doing the spirit bomb, I would be fine with it.
that could, you know, they would do that. They would do that in like the PNG style from Volume 3 on.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could see that.
Or just a picture. No, I'd be fine with it. I'm fine with it either way. The thing is, it changes so little in the long run that it being canon doesn't change anything other than RWBY using her silver eyes. Yeah.
All right, final question. Who is this for?
Mm. Who is this for?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Who is this show for? Because as RWBY fans, we're not exactly happy with it.
Yeah.
It has a bit of contradiction going on. It seems relatively superfluous. It has some pretty big animation flaws that we're not happy with. It can't quite capture Monty's style. So it's like, okay, maybe not the RWBY fans. Who is this for? New fans.
I imagine if I didn't know anything about RWBY, this would do nothing to, like, entice me to look more into it, to watch the show proper. I think I'd just be confused.
Yeah. I'm
who are all
baffled by it.
You keep saying semblance, but you're not describing it. Who are all these characters?
God, I'm just thinking of, like, if you had the opening scene be Weiss doing that talking thing, and, like, you could have the girls be sitting around, like, maybe RWBY, like, talking with Blake and Yang. It's like, oh yeah, my semblance is like this, and like RWBY's trying to understand maybe Blake's semblance and how it works, and maybe we could.
It's like thinking about like cool things, like strategy-wise.
Yeah.
Man,
you could.
Man,
yeah, why?
You ask who is this for? The only thing I can think of is it's for Miles and Carrie, who sat there and go, but I want RWBY to be considered a real anime. When we go to Japan and we make our vlog video bitching that, oh, people keep saying RWBY's not a real anime. Now it is. I can't see who else this was made for.
The other people it was made for are critics to sip on anger juice. That's what it is. And that's basically where I'm at. I'm sitting here sipping on my anger juice. It's
the fact that, like, it came and went and no one watched it. And the people who did, like, at best, they're like, yeah, it's good. And then at worst, it's like we're making a 2.5 hour long podcast talking about how much we didn't like it.
Oh, God.
I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
It is such an anomaly. It didn't need to be this way. Why did you hire Toru Bukata?
Yeah, it could have been a manga, or a light novel, or anything. I don't know why it had to be this fully animated Studio Shaft project.
Oh, God, it could have been a book?
It could have been. It's just nothing about this screams it had to be animated. And it had to be animated not in-house. Like, Rooster Teeth themselves couldn't have done this. I'm like, yeah, you could have. They could have probably made it look better.
Ultimately, if you were going to do something that, like, didn't matter to the main plot of things, you could have followed anyone else. Follow in a unique team. Yeah. That would be so cool if, like, that was always an idea I had with, like, oh, if I got hired on my Rooster Teeth, I would always be pushing to, like, I want to create a separate show that's about the people that keep Huntsman in check. Like, I had this whole, like, story in mind for there's a team called Echelon that's, like, it's a military unit, like, combined of all the different kingdoms got together and created Echelon, where you would have 5-member teams that were specialized to take down just one huntsman at a time. Like, they were...
Damn.
The idea would be, like, if huntsmen go rogue, they are incredibly dangerous, so we need countermeasures. And if huntsmen don't want to fight huntsmen, we need to make sure we have a unique military unit that's prepared for it. Well, they're faster to train, but they're not as effective alone as huntsmen. So we group them up in groups of 5 to take down one given huntsman. And, like, you could have, like, I had this whole story how they would like fight Team Coffee. Like that would be really cool.
Nice.
Like these
nice.
nice. Like, I had these really cool ideas, and like I never get. You could have had something like that, or you could just follow another huntsman team, or you could.
That's another thing. Like, there's
anything.
so much potential with the world of RWBY. There's so much to do. And even just this, it could have been a movie. There's no reason this had to be 12 episodes long, and you can tell. It drags ass, it repeats itself. It's just fucking 12 episodes feels like, well, that's what everyone does.
What galls me is that Gen Robuchi said, we can make this an 8-episode anime and then have 3 episodes for the recap. I'm not even seeing the 8.
No. It's just, they repeat the same plot things like 3 times. And then it's over.
And then they repeat the animation on top of that.
Oof. I found more repeated animation in episode 10.
Oh no. Was it?
I was like keeping track of it all. It's like when Jean runs up and he makes like a face. It's like copied from the episode 2 episodes prior where he's running with Pyrrha and the baby Weisses.
Oh my god!
Up to the train, yeah.
I was surprised when I found the Yang repeated frames that were just flipped.
Ugh.
I still can't believe they did the flying Weiss thing. Oh, Weiss's Magnificent Adventure. That was so disgusting to me because
it's her.
I lined up the audio with the storyboards and it made sense, and I'm like, I feel so bad for the sound editors.
It's so, and like, it's when her glyph, it's one frame, it's suddenly underneath her. It doesn't grow into place, it's just, and suddenly there's a glyph underneath her, and I'm like, what's happening?
I love that it's like she breaks away from Blake and like suddenly she's not standing anywhere near Blake. It is so
in
bizarre.
An empty void.
It is so jarring.
So, I think we've covered everything in regards to Ice Queendom.
Oh god.
I think I'm done.
I am. I did not expect this to go on for 2.5 hours.
There's a lot to cover. There's a lot of things to say, but
I need to eat dinner.
It's the cap on Ice Queendom. We're done. We're done with it.
You could call it the
thanks
tip
for joining
of the
me.
iceberg. I have had a fun time. This has been a blast.
It's been fun getting to talk to someone about it, because no one else I know, like none of my sisters aren't watching it, and they're like, okay, and I'm like, I need to vent.
Oh god, it's such a terrible show. Well, not. Where do you place it? Because you said you placed it below all the other RWBY volumes.
I do, which is 5 out of 10, which honestly speaks volumes on how highly I would put Volume 5, which I think is a 6 out of 10.
Oh, I consider like Volume 5 like a 2 or 3 out of 10.
And there's
Volume 8 is maybe a 4,
things.
and then I put Ice Queendom. The way I talked about it was that like Volume 1 was more inconsistent, but it had like this natural charm to it from its indie roots kind of thing going on.
Yes.
The Ice Queendom is sort of the inverse of that. It's more competently made, but it has a much more clinical and corporate feel to it. And like
that is so accurate.
I kind of put it maybe a little bit below Volume 1. That's about where I put it.
I can only it's 5 is so 5 out of 10 because the good parts are really good, and then the bad parts are really bad, and then everything else is just kind of in the middle. It's so perfectly just a blasé type of story to engage with.
A malaise.
So thank you for joining me in this very long podcast.
I've had a blast of a time. For the record, I have actually drunken all 2 liters of my bottle.
No, I had coffee and I had a cup of tea, and I ran out of both very early on. But I didn't want to get up because my dogs are sleeping, and if I wake them up, then they're just going to start running around. That is making banana noises.
Smart move. I've had to deal with a cat at my door. Luckily, he hasn't been banging on it, but I know he's waiting out there for me. He wants inside.
The time to strike. So yeah, everyone who's listening, check out Celtic Phoenix. I'm sure most of you already have. Watch Fixing RWBY. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, you can find me over at Celtic Phoenix. It's just search bar away. My big thing is
I'll also have
RWBY.
it in the description.
Big thing is Fixing RWBY. I have a Patreon if you want to support me there, but the big thing that I'm pushing right now is my novel, The Artificer, which is available in digital and print on Amazon. I know I kind of gave a little bit of a spoiler for it, but it's a fun science fantasy action romp type deal. It's a light read. It's supposed to be kind of a pulpy novel. It's not super long, so I hope you guys can pick it up and enjoy it. I had a fun time writing it, and I can't wait for more people to get it.
Very huge props. I sat there and went, people can make real books? And I was like, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna wait for Christmas when I get like Christmas money, and then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get it. Oh,
that's exciting.
I'm excited. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Catch you all on the flip side.
Bye bye.